Welcome to the April 7th virtual Durango City Council meeting. We're so happy to have you with us. We're happy to be back together, and we're happy to be with you here with our staff as well. Want to thank you so much in advance for your patience as we adapt and adjust to these virtual meetings. We are learning as we go, so thank you in advance for your patience. I am asking our counselors and our staff to keep their mics on mute, and we will take questions tonight as we progress through our chat button. So thank you very much in advance. And with that, Ms. Harmer, can we please have a roll call?
Councilor Baxter. Present. Councilor Bettine.
Here.
Councilor Noseworthy. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Bricky.
Here.
And Mayor Youssef.
Here, thank you. City Council, do we have any actual or perceived conflicts of interest this evening?
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Brookie. I have a potential conflict of interest on item consent agenda item 6.6 regarding a plat for Hillcrest property up at Hillcrest. And so if it's okay, we can leave it on the consent agenda, but I will abstain from voting on that particular topic.
That works for me. Does it work for the rest of council? Great. Thank you, Councilor Brookie, Mayor Pro Tem Brookie. We appreciate it. Anything else from council? Seeing none, then we will move on to public participation. This is, as we are taking public comments today. Couple things. This is for a virtual meeting. We have several avenues. Well, we had to adjust our avenues for public participation. We advised that public comments would be read into the record if we did not have too many of them, or if they were not too long in length. If there were too many or they were too long in length, then we were going to include them as part of the public record. I believe we will be able to likely read all of our public comments tonight. We are limiting the public comment section to 30 minutes, and the public comments are still limited to 3 minutes each. And with that, I'm going to turn the phone to Ms. Blake, please, to read our public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Youssef. This evening, we received 6 comments via the public comment link or email address for this meeting. The first comment is from Janice Lyon, and she says, "Hello, my name is Janice Lyon, and I have deep concern for the displaced workers due to the coronavirus pandemic. I would like the city of Durango to set up a charity where donations can be made, then distributed to those affected based on application. Advertising the charity in the Durango Herald and on the City of Durango website would notify residents of the need of those affected. Since it is unclear as to how long this pandemic will last, many displaced workers may be struggling to rent, mortgage, heat, food, water, and other basic necessities. I believe that many residents of Durango will be willing to help those affected by this pandemic. Thank you for your consideration. Janice Lyon." Janice, thank you for your comment. The next email that we received is from Jack Turner. It's related to e-bikes. "Hello, Durango City Councilors. I'm not sure when the discussion of pedal assist bikes or e-bikes will be on the agenda with regard to their use on dirt trails, but I would appreciate you adding this topic to the public commentary when appropriate. I believe there should be no blanket restriction on e-bikes with regard to their use on the city's soft surface dirt trails because 1, there is no inherent difference between e-bikes and other bicycles regarding wear and tear on dirt trails. All bikes have the same basic tires, and that's the only portion of the bike that comes into contact with the trail. 2, there is no inherent difference between e-bikes and other bicycles regarding safety on dirt trails. Safety is strictly a function of the rider, not the type of bicycle. 3, virtually everyone pays the taxes that support our trail system, and all should have equal access to the trails, regardless of their choice of bicycle. For those who believe trails are too crowded or would be too crowded if e-bikes are permitted, they may opt not to partake. It is reasonable and unfair to prohibit other citizens from using the trails to keep them less crowded for folks that use standard bicycles. 5, e-bikes have great potential for the recovery and reinvention of our community once COVID-19 issues are settled. Traffic and parking can be improved, and e-bikes will be much more efficient and cost-effective for some commuters. Recreation and tourism opportunities will be enhanced. 6, look ahead, not within or behind. Note, qualifications and restrictions regarding motor size, electric only, etc. could be reasonable. Thank you for your good work. Jack Turner, 184 Riverview Drive, Durango, Colorado, 81301. The next comment that we received is from Dylan Walls, related to the library's Wi-Fi. I saw someone post online on the yard sale that the library has shut off its Wi-Fi. Is this true? If so, then the Wi-Fi should be turned back on, so folks who don't have access to the internet can use the internet to file for unemployment or other needs via the web. Please address this publicly if you haven't done so. Also, public Wi-Fi should be set up in many areas and announced to the public if other public services are not being provided, like recreation. Respectfully, Dylan Wall. The 4th comment is from Stephen Stewart, Superintendent of FCI Contractors, Inc., 186 Moose Lane, Durango, Colorado, 81303. To whom it may concern, last fall, my wife and I bought our first home at 2411 Thomas Avenue here in Durango. We have closely paid attention to the city's planned reconstruction of Thomas Avenue, attended meetings, and consulted with city staff. We strongly agree with the city's suggestion that we replace our sewer line while the street is under construction. We did have our sewer line scoped with the camera during the home inspection period and know that while it's Orangeburg, it's still functional. We and our neighbors received several estimates from local and qualified contractors to replace the line, with the figures averaging around $9,000. Seeing that amount of money would be difficult during normal good times, doing it right now seems unwise during these uncertain times. I am writing to see if the city would consider alternatives for this project. We do not want to see it delayed, but wonder if the city could assume a role which would lessen the financial impact of the sewer line replacement, perhaps by assuming control of the sewer replacement, then spreading the cost over several years on tax bills. We are very much open to other options as well. Thank you for your consideration, and we really appreciate your help. Stephen and Beth Stewart. The next comment is related to the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club lease. From Jillian N. Wasinski at 61 Estancia Lane, Durango, Colorado, 81301. The Gem and Mineral Club is a fixture in our community. It is a great resource that has provided me with skills in silversmithing and jewelry making. It provides access to tools and machines that most people do not have in their own home. It cultivates an appreciation of unique geology of our region and brings people together who are interested in gems, minerals, and lapidary arts and jewelry making. Please renew the lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. Thank you. Our final public comment that we received this evening is an anonymous comment that was submitted via a letter. Complaints from an educator. 1, most other districts I don't have a date that this was received. Most other districts are closed for longer than 1 week, but my school district is only closed for spring break. A previously scheduled week off. Students will have 2 days added on to the end of the break. 9, our school district is only closed for spring break and 2 days for students, not staff. This is putting staff's health in jeopardy and putting the public at large safety and health in jeopardy. This decision was made by our Board of Education, not state or health officials. Being required to go to school and teach threatens my family's safety because I live with elderly parents and my at-risk infant at home. If mandatory leave is required, it will come from our sick leave. School closures should occur under state direction. The district has compassionate leave available for staff. Access that they should not have any sick leave. Superintendent Dan Snowberger, March 12th, in an email to staff. This is taking teachers' money that is rightfully theirs. If this was no COVID-19, I would not take any leave, and then I would be compensated by the school district in June or July for the days I didn't take. If I'm forced to take my sick leave because of state mandatory closure, that is taking money from my pocket. This is depleting teachers of their sick and vacation time. Mandatory days off will be made up over the summer. Quote, if school is canceled, there will be a need for extended school year to achieve required instructional minutes based on current information and CDE expectations, unquote. Superintendent Dan Snowberger in a March 13th email to staff. This policy will be taking guaranteed time off for teachers away, affecting teachers' plans and personal time and obligations, responsibilities, etc. that have already been created. This taking students' time away from them and their families. This is derived from a state law that requires a specific number of hours for student-teacher contact. In times of crisis, previously in other states like Texas or Louisiana after Katrina, an emergency act was declared to waive required hours for student-teacher contact to ensure that students didn't spend their entire summer in school. I am writing now because this will be the next of the issue in the major crisis. What do we do about education moving forward? Right now, we're all dealing with the fallout from the panic and lack of leadership regarding COVID-19 in the schools, grocery stores, and public destinations. As a teacher, I don't believe that school closure decisions should be left up to the school board across the state. The implications of school closures or a lack thereof affects society as a whole. It benefits every one of our schools to be closed, students, teachers, families, and community members, so that we can slow the spread of the disease. The illusion that students are learning right now while this is going on is also comical to educators. Our district leadership, state leadership, or national leadership need to mandate school closures for everyone's safety. They should support the country in doing this by creating a plan for the effect that this is creating on jobs, the economy, and rations throughout our nation. To do anything less is reckless and dangerous. The next state or national government needs to make plans to figure out what to do about moving student education forward in a country where 1/3 of families don't have consistent internet or devices or food for their children. An online schooling option will not suffice. Asking teachers and students to make these up for next week over the summer is unreasonable. Taking teachers' sick leave and guaranteed time off away is cruel. And we are already tasked with so much and paid so little. Colorado pays less per pupil than it did 40 years ago, and we are the 49th least funded in education in the U.S. Please consider these points that were made. Your teachers are being deeply affected during this crisis and are asking your support from their government agencies. And again, that was anonymous, so I don't have a name that I can relate to that public comment.
That's it, Amber? That's all of our
That's
public comment for tonight? Great, and thank you so much for the good job reading.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will move on to our proclamation section. We have one proclamation tonight, and I will be reading it. It's regarding Arbor Week, April 13th through April 17th, 2020. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide a habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas Durango, Colorado is a city located in a natural setting of great beauty. And whereas Durango, Colorado has been recognized as Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its enhancement of its urban forests. And whereas the Parks and Recreation Department of the City of Durango will assist citizens, businesses, and organizations in making Durango a more beautiful place to live and do business. Now, therefore, I, Melissa Youssef, Mayor of the City of Durango, do hereby proclaim the week of April 13th to April 17th to be Arbor Week. And I urge all citizens to celebrate by planting trees and experience the importance of trees by spending time outside enjoying the community forest. And normally I would hand that off, but in our virtual meeting setting, we will just move right on to our consent agenda. Ms. Harmer, this just very quickly for our any viewers, this part of the agenda is set aside for council to approve items by a single motion that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the councilor requests that an item be removed from the agenda. Ms. Harmer, can we please have a reading of the consent agenda item?
Yes, items 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 are approval of minutes. 6.1 are the minutes from the study session of February 25th, 2020. 6.2 are the minutes from the regular meeting of March 2nd, 2020. 6.3 are the minutes from the special study session held March 13th, 2020. 6.4 are minutes from the special meeting held March 17th, 2020. Items 6.5 and 6.6 are discussion and possible action items. 6.5 is a discussion and possible action concerning Resolution R 2020-8, authorizing the appropriation of grant funding from the FAA and an additional appropriation to the Airport Capital Projects Fund in excess of the amounts budgeted in the 2020 budget to acquire certain property for airport use. Item 6.6 is a discussion and possible action concerning the villas at Hillcrest, Phase 5, final as-built plat. Item 6.7 is a request for a public hearing with a proposed date of April 21st. It's a request for a public hearing to consider the granting of an easement to Atmos Energy to install a gas line under Chapman Hill to service the Riverview neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Harmer. Do you have any counselors that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda this evening?
Mayor Youssef, I have just one minor modification of the minutes of February 25th study session, and that's just a name, page 3 of 4 under new business. There was a reference to Kevin Hall, and that should have been Kevin Bomber. It was a statement that I made. So I just didn't want to implicate Kevin in that statement. So Kevin Hall, that being. So I don't know if that modification could be made as part of the consent agenda.
I think so, unless I hear any objection from council.
I actually sent that in to Amy right after I read it and mentioned that. So I don't know, Amber or Faye, do you know if Amy made those adjustments?
I have made a note of it. I can certainly make that change.
Thank you.
And I believe I saw an email saying that she did make that change, but we can verify that.
Great. It's of record, so that's fine.
Any other consent agenda item to be removed, council? Okay, I'll be looking for a motion from a counselor.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Ms. Harmer, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Moving on to our legislative and policy-related hearings tonight. We have 2 of them. This is an opportunity for citizens to provide formal input into City Council's decision-making process. We will welcome all public testimony for these public hearings this evening. The structure of the public hearings is that we will hear from our staff. This will be followed by public testimony if we have any. We will have questions from council and then any follow-up with staff and motion from council. We're starting with 9.1, which is a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 23 of the Durango Code of Ordinances, Taxation, to to adopt standardized sales tax definitions, and to apply those definitions in the provision of the code related to the imposition and collection of sales taxes. Dirk?
Yes. Yes, thank you. This item is, comes out of a effort by CML to assist particularly home rule municipalities across the state in adopting a uniform set of sales tax definitions in an attempt to make the collection of sales tax by those municipalities easier in the world of internet commerce. One of the issues that has arisen following Wayfair is the objections of retailers that they have to deal with dozens of different tax codes in dozens of different cities that self-collect sales tax. So in response to that, an effort was undertaken to try to make all of those sales tax definitions in the various communities as uniform as possible. We've undertaken that effort, and so the effort is, again, to make those sales tax definitions the same as other municipalities to the greatest extent possible. That will also require some amendments, small amendments to the tax code to make sure that those definitions are applied throughout that code. So on that basis, the tabor prohibits increases in sales tax in a fashion that would in effect increase income from sales taxes. So these definitions will be drafted and have been drafted in a fashion to try to be neutral in terms of both imposition of tax and collection of tax dollars. So I'd be happy to answer questions, but that is the item that's scheduled for this hearing. Good. Yeah.
I have no questions.
Do we have any public testimony for this public hearing?
We do not.
Okay. And questions from council?
No questions.
Seeing none, I will look for a motion from council.
I'd make a motion that, do we have an ordinance number?
Sorry, it hasn't been drafted yet, so the motion will actually be to direct me to draft the ordinance and bring it back for future approval by council. It hasn't been completed yet.
Okay, well then I would make such a motion.
Second.
Ms. Farmer, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Batain?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Berkey?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to item 9.2, which is a public hearing to consider an ordinance authorizing a lease with the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. And now we're going to tap into Ms. Kathy Metz.
Good evening, Mayor Youssef and members of the City Council. This is a public hearing to consider the renewal of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club lease for a portion of Brookside Park. It is approximately 1,470 square feet. That encompasses the building and the grounds around the building. Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club and its predecessor organization have operated this facility in Brookside Park since 1948. The current lease has expired, and the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club would like to renew the lease with the city for its continued use and operation of the facilities in Brookside Park. The city will receive $10 from the Gem and Mineral Club once the lease is executed for a period of 10 years.
Thank you, Ms. Metz. Do we have any public testimony for this?
Yes, we do. We have a good deal of public comment on this. I apologize for reading the one from Miss Jillian Wyszynski earlier. I had it in the wrong pile. So public comments on this public hearing. We'll begin with Sarah J. Haywood, 559 West Work Street, Sheridan, Wyoming, 82801. Dear City Council members, the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club is a bright and shining star. Its members and facility make it an ideal place for friends to gather to make beautiful art. There are very few places in the world where people with common interests can come together to learn a new skill from each other with no hefty membership fees. Anyone can afford to join and have access to professional quality tools and equipment. When visiting Durango, the facility made it possible for me to study and practice my new lapidary and jewelry making skills. Please renew the lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. It is definitely a community treasure. The next comment is from Chip Wallace, County Road 4382, County Road 203, Durango, Colorado 81302. To Durango City Council, I wish to add my support for the renewal of the Gem and Mineral Club lease. The club has always supported educational opportunities and civic engagement. The FCGM harkens back to the days where everyone in Durango was engaged in clubs and organizations of all sorts, when community involvement was just a way of life. It is one of the last holdouts from the days when people actually did things together. The club and its clubhouse are absolutely worth the city's support. Thank you for your kind attention. Dr. Monty Moore, 2644 County Road 250, Durango, Colorado 81301. Please continue the lease with the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. The facility is a wonderful resource for those interested in silversmithing. Bethany Gleason, 2916 Junction Street, Durango, Colorado 81301. To whom it may concern, please renew the lease with the Gem and Mineral Club. I have recently discovered this wonderful community resource, and it is a valuable resource for the city. It is a place where people of all ages can come and learn together, grow and share in their commonalities. I remember the last time I was there, working on a project. There was a little boy about 8 to 10 years old who was in the club polishing stones with his father. He was so excited about it, and although he didn't even know me, he wanted to share his passion for what he was doing and proceeded to show me every last one of his rocks. It's refreshing and necessary to be in a place where young and old can experience the joy of a shared passion. Please renew this lease for a wonderful place. Thank you for your time and consideration. Siggy Palmer, 211 County Road 202, Durango, Colorado 81301. Please renew the lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. It is a source of learning and the furtherance of many art forms here in our community, not only making them accessible, but affordable. Lori Triplehorn, 602 Eagle Pass, Durango, Colorado 81301. I am a new resident whose husband was recruited here as a physician at Mercy. As a jewelry designer, the existence of the Gem Club made a significant impact on my willingness to relocate here. Although other cities have similar clubs, this one had excellent facilities, training, and participation. Not only is it a gem, no pun intended, for Durango, it can be argued it provides a way for people to make an income. Mary Ornsey, 41 South Horse Gulch Loop, Durango, Colorado 81301. The lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club should absolutely be renewed. It is a very valuable resource for our community, bringing young and aspiring jewelers together for learning, teaching skills to new jewelers, and supplying a place to commune and work together. It would be an absolute shame to lose such a valuable resource to our community. Please renew. Happy Harrington, Designs by Happy, 8 Estancia Lane, Durango, Colorado 81301. Dear Durango City Council members, I am writing to request the Gem and Mineral Club lease be renewed. This organization is truly a distinctive gem in Durango. As a longtime jewelry maker, the space is like no other. There are opportunities for the experienced and for those just getting started, with opportunities to both mentor and be mentored. I know of no other town with such a unique and appreciated amenity. The club touches the lives of many in the area and hopefully will be able to remain on North Main and assist in its revitalization. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion. Stay safe, blessings to you all, and thank you for what you do for the community. Chase Romero, 2951 Richard Drive, Apartment 1, Durango, Colorado, 81301. Hello there. I have been a member of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club for 4 years now. Since my time there, I have started my own silversmithing business and have watched countless people start businesses in the metal arts industry. I have watched retired community members find purpose again and have empowered 16-year-olds how to make their own rings. It's a flourishing organization in Durango that is rooted in science, art, and community. We would really appreciate it if you renewed our lease. Jennifer Floyd, 100 Turtle Lake Meadows Road, Durango, 81301. I can't even begin to tell you how important the Gem and Mineral Club is to me, but I will try. I joined the club 5 years ago. In that time, I have taken many classes in jewelry making and rock cutting techniques. My skills have improved immensely, and I now have a small jewelry business. I sell my handmade jewelry and accessories in many local stores and at the Durango's Farmer Market. Additionally, my husband and I have taken an educational field trip with the club. We have learned from local experts about the variety of rocks and minerals in the Southwest while enjoying the outdoors in our beautiful region. The club provides outstanding resources and classes that I would not otherwise have access to. The equipment, saws, polishing equipment, tool kilns that are available to the club are very expensive, large in size, and not things that you could easily own in your own home. The Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club is an essential part of my small business. Please protect this valuable community resource. Diane Thornton, DKT Designs Fine Beaded Jewelry, 300 County Road 142, Durango, Colorado, 81303. I am writing to support the continuing of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club lease. I am a jewelry maker and have taken several classes at the club. It is an invaluable resource for learning and support for me as a maker. Thank you for your consideration. Carl Lindman, 1497 Heritage Road, Hesperus, Colorado, 81326. Esteemed council members, as an active member of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club, I would like to add my voice to others and encourage you to extend our lease to 10 years. I have personally contributed to the improvements made in our property in the last year and hope we can continue to do so with the incentive provided by the assurance of a future beyond a year or two. The club has been valuable, creative, and a social resource to me personally and to so many others over the years. Looking forward to being an integral part of the creative district. Thank you. Megan Murillo, 2232 West 2nd Avenue, Durango, Colorado. I am writing in regards to the consideration of the renewal of the lease for the Gem and Mineral Club at Brookside Park. This organization has been a Durango tradition since the late 1940s. It has provided educational opportunities, livelihoods in the community for 73 years. I am 39 years old, and this club has been a strong support for me over the last 13 years since moving here. I am the chair of the 67th Annual Gem and Mineral Show, which, as you know, attracts thousands of tourists every July to the fairgrounds. The club has community members from all over the region, young and old, who come together to celebrate their love for the earth and their craft. Old teaching young, these clubs do not exist much around our country as much as they have, and it's a special addition to our diverse community. It's a lovely location that is central to visitors, many who stop in to learn about what we do, especially now that the Chamber is our neighbor. I couldn't think of a better location than the new creative district of Durango that is being established. We are all inclusive and love to accept new folks. Please consider working with us in preserving this historical and traditional community club. Robin Henry, 555 East 31st Street, Durango, Colorado, 81301. I wanted to reach out and express my interest in having the lease renewed for the Gem and Mineral Club. I like that place and don't want to see anything negatively impact the club, especially in the face of all these COVID issues. Let's focus on keeping a source and location of happiness. open and available to all. Thank you. Pat Speno. Please release the Gem and Mineral Club. It offers wonderful learning opportunities through its many classes and fun for a wide range of people. The enrichment of a hobby that is not possible from home is a rich and envied community offering. We are so lucky to enjoy all that this club has to offer. Don't stop this from happening at this gem of a club. Pat Spenco, Durango. Carrie Hutchins, 858 Main Avenue, Suite 204, Durango, Colorado, 81301. Dear councilmen and women, I am writing in support of the city extending the Gem and Mineral Club's lease. This is an incredible nonprofit that does so much to support arts in our community. It is wonderful to have a community center to work on lapidary and metalsmithing art. The Gem and Mineral Club has been a place that I have learned how to silversmith and connect with other members of the community. I don't personally have the money or space to purchase the equipment that I utilize at the Gem Club. Without the Gem Club, I won't be able to continue as a silversmith or lapidary. Please help. This lease is essential to the continued operation of the Gem and Mineral Club. Thank you for your time and consideration. Scott Dotson, 101 Spring Lane, Bayfield, Colorado, 81122. Please renew the Gem Club lease. The club has been a part of the community for many years and is an important historic fixture in Durango. It provides the community with both recreational and educational opportunities and should be allowed to continue. Thank you. Adele and Rich Kurtz, 127 Renee Way, Bayfield, Colorado. We are in support of the lease renewal for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. It is an outstanding public organization that could not exist without the continued support of our community. I am particularly touched by how often we see seniors teaching teenagers and younger people how to identify and cut rocks, polish their finds, and or make jewelry. Most of its members are retired or nearly so. We try to pass the torch, share old-time techniques and values. It comes back. There's a talented young man who is passing his techniques for wire wrapping onto us oldsters too. The giving and sharing, free of charge, overflowing with generosity of time and resources is what I love most about the place, as well as the appreciation for stones, rocks, and minerals that surround us. Most of us were drawn to this region of the country because we love the natural beauty of our mountains. Those who appreciate this club realize that beauty exists because of the minerals that surround us, their shape and character formed over millions of years. Here, you can take a piece of it, customize it to your liking, and remember what makes our area special. Let's not forget. Please help this valuable organization continue in its current location, and whatever you can do to help us preserve it. Deanne Road, 515 Jenkins Ranch Road, Durango, Colorado, 81301. To whom it may concern, I urge you to vote yes to the lease of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. As the current treasurer and frequent user of club facilities, I'm also very thankful that the shop is available to me and many others. To be able to be creative and see creativity as it happens is one of the coolest things a person can experience. Taking classes there and participating in field trips are also a ton of fun. Being around so many people with such vast knowledge and experience is not something I want to give up. And I am sure the rest of the city enjoys the Gem and Mineral Show each summer as much as we do. And I love the fact that our club provides a small scholarship to Fort Lewis College students. It's a total win for everyone. Mary Louise Merjevich. I live at 555 East 31st Street in Durango, Colorado. Please consider renewing the lease of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. I go into the shop to use the lapidary equipment, take jewelry making courses, and love to go on field trips. It has been an amazing way to meet people and build relationships in this community, and I now that I have been laid off from my job, it will be essential for my income. In these trying times, when we are unsure of the foreseeable future and how long this will last, we need these community centers for people to help one another and help supplement themselves. I know many people that depend on the equipment that I now will depend on too. Please help us help ourselves. Thank you for your time. My name is Julie Teepley. I live in Cortez. I'd like to take a moment to comment about the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. The club has been around for a very long time and has provided for a place for people to gather, to learn, and share their experience with others. There are too few places, such as the Gem Club, within our area. I appreciate the club and the location. I'm asking the City Council to grant an extension of their lease so that the club can continue to be an asset for the community and the people. Julie Tepley, 218 West Montezuma Avenue, Cortez, Colorado. Elizabeth Self, 2020 Crestview Drive, Durango, Colorado, 81301. Dear Sir or Madam, I have been a member of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club for several years and a true fan for over 40 years. My grandchildren are the reason I joined, for them to get a true sense of geology, especially in this area. I feel it is a great Brookside Park neighbor. Thank you for allowing me to comment. Tom Strain, 302 County Road 231. Hello, I am a longtime member of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. I would like to ask Council to support our club again by granting us a lease. As a senior citizen, I enjoy the lapidary arts, learning new ways to make use of rocks that I collect and passing the knowledge on to the younger generation as my parents passed it on to me. Thank you very much for your past support. Jessica Mitchell, 611 Hoker Drive, Durango, Colorado, 81301. My name is Jessica Mitchell and I own the property located at 611 Hoker Drive, Durango, Colorado. I was notified of the renewal of the lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club that is on the agenda for public comment this evening. Please renew the lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. The club is a home away from home for so many of its members. The creative learning opportunities provided by the club are unlimited. Seeing the camaraderie, joy, and creativeness that come from this small but vital club is unmatched. I personally have attended numerous jewelry making workshops and have volunteered at the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. I have found a craft that I am very good at, and the ability to use the club to make pieces of jewelry not only for myself, but for friends and family, has inspired me to continue to design pieces. Hopefully someday I'll start a small silversmith business. Without the club and the resources, this would have never happened. The club has worked cooperatively with its park neighbors and become compliant with ADA guidelines for small businesses, and is currently working towards facility regulations to meet the North Main improvement goals. Again, please renew the lease for the Four Corner Gem and Mineral Club, as it is essential for artists, rock hounds, and everyone in between. If you haven't come down to see what happens there, you should. It's a magical and happy place for us all. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration. My name is Barbara Lawson, and I live at 130 Montezuma Place in Durango. I am writing this letter in support of the lease renewal for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. I have been a member of the club for about 10 years, and it provides a space for me to work on my silversmith skills. I use the club on a regular basis, about once or twice a week. They have an amazing assortment of equipment and tools that I could never afford for myself. I am so appreciative of this resource and that is available to anyone in our community. The Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club also puts on a show at the fairgrounds each July that is an enormous tourist and local attraction. The club recently made renovations to become ADA compliant. Please support this lease renewal for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. Thank you. David Gonzalez, 431 Burkett Drive. I would like to encourage City Council to improve the continuation of the lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club on the property they occupy. This club is an important organization for the Durango community. It offers a place for those interested in learning and applying jewelry, crafting, and earth sciences. It serves people of all ages and is a wonderful connection to a diverse group of people with similar interests. The club also supports scholarships for DHS and FLC students and has been instrumental in promoting the education of youth on a variety of topics. The show that the club organizes and sponsors in July is a gem, in quotes, for the community and is attended by people from around the region. I encourage you to renew the club's lease and support their efforts. Good evening, counselors. My name is James Perry, former president of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club in our city of Durango, Colorado. The club has been an anchor in our community for 65 plus years. Colorado is known for a variety of minerals, especially within the southwestern part of our fair state. As we act as a stopping point for travelers, geologists, and field trips taken by students in the educational community. Our relationship with our community, the state, and our neighbors has been positive in a variety of aspects. We, as community members of La Plata County, support this resolution to renew the lease with the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club, a local nonprofit that has been a positive fixture and a proud supporter of our community. Laura Parker, 524 Cottonwood Creek Road, Durango, Colorado. Please renew the lease to our workshop. The Gem and Mineral Club is a wonderful community group, and this shop space allows us to grow its relationships and skills related to hobbies of geology, lapidary, and metalwork. Some use to develop skills and to develop and maintain small businesses. Most cannot afford to have all the equipment or the space to do this in their own home. The leadership of the shop stewards are wonderful and ensure shop safety. Michelle Gores Wiley, 4537 County Road 237, Durango. I urge the council to renew the Gem Club lease. Our family loves attending the annual Gem and Mineral Show at the fairgrounds and the club and all that the club brings to our community each year. It is one of our favorite summer activities. I believe that they bring quality vendors to the area. As a mother of 3 children, I have found the vendors to always be generous to children. Just giving a child a polished rock is magical to a child. My children always participated in the club's kids corner at the show and loved the fluorescent rock display. Additionally, one of the members of the club gave our family a large box of polished rocks for a treasure through panning activity. Hello, this is Whitney Largent at 383 Michael Nicole Drive in Ignacio. The Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club is an amazing asset to our community, and I adore being associated with such a generous and diverse organization. Please continue the lease, as it means a great deal to me and quite a few others. Randy Ferris, 62 Jameson Drive, Durango, Colorado. Dear Mayor Youssef and City Council members, I'm writing to voice my support for the approval of the lease renewal for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. The club is a long-standing fixture in the Four Corners community, having been in existence since the late 1940s. It has fully equipped lapidary shop and extensive equipment for the creation of various types of jewelry, as evidenced by the club's website, durangorock.org. Many different classes are offered and are regularly very well attended. It provides community members opportunities to learn new skills, explore creative opportunities, and enjoy fellowship and camaraderie with like-minded friends. As a 501c3 nonprofit for educational organization, the club also provides educational opportunities for young members of our community. For many years, the club has provided scholarships to geoscience students at Fort Lewis College, and this year, due to the financial success of the club that we have enjoyed over the last few years, we are adding additional scholarships for Fort Lewis students studying the arts. The club has over 250 members in 2019, and 2020 looks to be on par with those membership numbers. Please consider the importance and value of this club to our community and approve the lease renewal so that the club may continue its mission. Hello, my name is Lucas Werden, and I am a resident at 2347 West 3rd Avenue. I am on the board of the Durango Gem and Mineral Club, and am writing to you today and hope that you will graciously renew our lease with the city of Durango. The Gem and Mineral Club has helped me in many ways. I love to be a part of the community and help people learn and grow. When I became a member of the club and of the board, it gave me a platform to assist a broader range of members in the community. It also gave me a way to develop and fine-tune my own art skills, as well as have a stable place to go to during times of hardship. Thank you for reading, and I hope you are all staying safe during these unprecedented times. Miley Skeisler, 235 Lakeview Drive, Bayfield, Colorado, 81122. Dear Council, the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club provides a workshop equipped with machines and tools I need to continue my hobby that I began by my father over 70 years ago of lapidary and silversmithing. As a member since 2013, I steward in the workshop and helped during our yearly Gem and Mineral Show at the fairground. This July will be our 67th year. Our club offers many services to the community, including presentations, a scholarship to Fort Lewis, group activities for kids, and a variety of classes. I encourage you to renew our lease so that we may continue to serve the community and our membership of around 200. Susie Fisher, 182 Linda Lane, Durango, Colorado. I would highly recommend the signing of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral lease tonight at the meeting. I have been a member ongoing for 10 years and want to express my gratitude for the club. I have met folks whom are working on classes or open shop times from as far away as Canada, and I once introduced to our club, I have never met a person who doesn't see the great value. For me, the club is a safe place for all who would like to share knowledge and those like me who are looking for lapidary skills, which I have learned within those four walls. The selfishness of many who dutifully serve, selflessness of many who dutifully serve as volunteers for not only the governing body, but all other positions and assistants within the 67 Gem and Mineral Club show this July, if we don't have to cancel. Please take a moment and say yes to a lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club and let creative folks continue to do their outreach to our community. Tracy Belt, 421 Burkett Drive, Durango, Colorado. I hope you are all in good health and staying safe. I'm writing today to ask that you please consider renewing the lease of the Four Corner Gem and Mineral Club lease. This is a wonderful resource for silversmiths like myself to cut stones, lapidary work. In addition, they provide educational classes for our community. From Charlotte Lesson, 328 Jenkins Ranch Road, Durango, Colorado, 81302. I've been a member of the Gem and Mineral Club for I've been a member of the Gem and Mineral Club for over 7 years. It has been one of the best and most extensive clubs I've been in. They are very active in the community and put on one of the best shows in our area. They also provide scholarships for college students studying geology. I hope we will continue to be able to use this space. Thank you.
Amber?
Yes.
Excuse me, can I just ask a question since council doesn't have the opportunity to see how many people we might have in the audience tonight? Can you tell me what it's looking like?
One more.
Great, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Jama Crawford, 646 East 3rd Avenue, Durango, Colorado, Club President. Hello, council members. First, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your steadfast commitment to our town, your resourcefulness and your response to the pandemic. Your leadership and videocasts have been very comforting. On Tuesday evening, you will make a decision regarding the city's lease of the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club. Under these extraordinary circumstances, I thank you for moving this item forward. I sincerely hope that you will renew the club's lease. Lease relations have been continuous and friendly since 1947, so the lapse of this lease since 2017 was hard on all parties. The club is completely volunteer-run, science and art education nonprofit. It enjoys a nearly unique distinction as a nonprofit because it operates in the black without public monies or grant funding. Your approval of this land lease will allow us to continue to host an open art studio for lapidary, metalsmith, enamel, casting, and allied arts in Brookside Park. We are normally open 20 hours a week with daytime, evening, and weekend hours. During our last full month of operation in February, we had 203 visitors. We presently have 239 local households in our active membership. We offer geology, metal arts programs to schools and scout groups, weekend lapidary and jewelry art classes for adults, field trips for rock hunting, and the annual Gem and Mineral Show at the La Plata County Fairgrounds every July. We incubate art entrepreneurs whose goods are found in most Durango galleries, as well as online via Pinterest, Etsy, and eBay. The club funds a $1,500 scholarship at Fort Lewis College each year, issued to a promising geology student. In short, the club is a beloved community organization populated by all social, ethnic, and economic groups in the Four Corners region. The club took very seriously the difficulties in getting this lease approved and has begun to raise funds for a future building improvement project. Through earned income alone, we have raised over $50,000 over the last 3 years dedicated to building renovation. It is our intent to cooperate with the objectives of the North Main Improvement District and Creative Economy. With help from the Community Connections, we underwent an ADA compliant audit and corrected all areas identified by that audit. In short, the club strives to be a good tenant, a good neighbor, and to make valuable contribution to the quality of community life. We hope you will renew this lease and find time to visit the Gem Club in Brookside Park when we and our entire community are back in business. That is the end of the public comment.
Well, thank you to all of our residents for all of the great public comment. And with that, do we have any questions from council?
Mayor Youssef, I'd like to make a motion with all that well-articulated outpouring of support. And we certainly, the Gem and Mineral Club filled the virtual room tonight. So I'd like to make a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare an ordinance authorizing a lease for the Four Corners Gem and Mineral Club in Brookside Park.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Ms. Farmer, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes?
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you very much for all of that support. That's great. And with that, I'm going to move on to item 9.3. Councilors, looking for a motion to see if we have support to move item 9.3 and continue this item on May 5th. This is a public hearing to consider the formation of the Urban Renewal Authority. And what we're hoping is that there's a chance we may be live on May 5th in which we can hear from people in person. And if not, then we will continue this virtually on May 5th.
Mayor Youssef, I'd like to make a motion to continue this to May 5th to allow for direct communication amongst ourselves as well as input from the public.
I'll second.
Input, any questions, consideration from council? Ms. Harmer, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes, thank you. All right, with that, we will move on to item number 12, which is administrative, and I'm just going to hand it over to our interim city manager, Amber Blake, to begin item 12.1 and go through the whole thing.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Youssef and members of the council. Item 12.1 is a discussion and possible action concerning the approval of a resolution adopting a policy for electronic meetings during an emergency situation in city council, board, and commission meetings in response to COVID-19. This agenda item has a policy for electronic meetings attached, and I am asking for city council to approve this meeting policy so that we continue moving forward with business during this pandemic virtually.
So I sent out an email about this when we first got it, the Section 5, Exhibit A, noting that this was specific to the pandemic, whereas the entire rest of the emergency authorization is about emergency authorization. So, and I thought that Dirk also mentioned that possibly he was reworking some of this wording so that it, because the section where it says, no members of city council, board, or commission shall be present in city council chambers or other meeting locations to avoid unnecessary contact between members. Obviously, that's more specific to our current situation, whereas I think if we change the wording to that or added to it, such that if it wasn't a pandemic, we could do it a little differently. This would apply for any emergency and not just the one that we're currently in.
Yeah, I actually did send an email this afternoon, and I apologize, you probably didn't get a chance to see it. The and I acknowledge that the policy is generally broader. The resolution, however, is specific that it's only effective during the period of the declaration. And then the resolution also says that council can make changes or continue the policy at the end of that time period. I guess I think that moving forward, we may want to have, this policy is frankly probably more broad than you may want to have for the general kind of emergency situation. So we certainly can discuss changing that language, but I think because the resolution makes this effective only for the period of the declaration, that it sort of cures that issue, but it's up to council on how to proceed with that.
What I hear you say, this is very, from the first sentence, it's basically strictly for this particular purpose. And should we decide this is a great idea to have virtual meetings and these kinds of meetings for other purposes in the future, then perhaps the language should be different, as Councilor Baxter is alluding to. But this is appropriate for this place and time at this moment.
That was the intent, that it would just apply to this current situation, and we would revisit it afterwards. So yes, that's right.
Well, I would like to explore the option of doing just exactly what Councilor Baxter is referring to, because I think this is going to come in pretty handy for a number of issues. Is hopefully not coronavirus, but in the future. But yeah, I think that allows you time to craft the appropriate language, maybe a little tighter, and put a little more thought into it. But for the moment, this ordinance serves our current purposes, is what my feeling is.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's a resolution, it's not an ordinance, but I think so. But if you do want to change the language, we could say that, unless council, or before, unless it's safe to do so, there won't be anyone present in the council chambers. That was the idea, is to keep people away, obviously.
I just want to mention that the resolution itself doesn't have the words in it that I'm speaking to. It's only the policy.
Right. The resolution itself, again, is only effective during the period of the emergency declaration. So.
Okay. Thank you. Other thoughts from council? Okay, then I would entertain a motion.
And does this have a resolution number, Dirk?
It probably does, but frankly, I don't have it.
Okay. Well, I would make a motion to approve a resolution of the City of Durango adopting a policy for electronic meetings in City Council and board and commission meetings in response to COVID-19.
I'll second that.
Further discussion from council? Ms. Farmer, may we have a roll call?
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes?
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Thank you. Number 12.2.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we have, get to my agenda here, discussion and possible action to consider the approval of the corrected resolution number R 2019-50, which adopts a revised 2020 annual budget for the City of Durango, and the adoption of a corrected ordinance number 2019-26 to amend the appropriation of funds for 2020. I'm going to ask that our interim finance director, acting finance director, Devin Schmidt, come to the virtual meeting, and she will be sharing her screen with the council to run through a presentation on the budget.
Good evening, Mayor Eustace and members of City Council. I am going to share my screen out as Amber had mentioned, and we are going to do a brief presentation so that we can discuss the revisions to the 2020 budget. So sorry, bear with me 1 second. All right. So the city manager's proposed budget for 2020 was reviewed and adopted by City Council by resolution on December 3rd, 2019. The proposed budget outlined in detail the purpose and the extent of each expenditure in each of the accounting funds. In addition, there was a public hearing on the budget of November 5th of 2019, and the budget was adopted on December 3rd. As you all recall, after the approval of the budget on December 3rd, it was determined that the city should continue to work on correcting the issues with the budget. And the process of reviewing and amending the irregularities in the 2020 budget. This has allowed staff, department heads, community members, the Department of Local Affairs to assist in reviewing and producing the budget with more oversight than has ever occurred. We met with City Council on March 13th to go over the corrections. And here we are today on April 7th to discuss the revised changes. So per council's direction, the amendments have been made to the estimated revenues and proposed expenditures, which requires the adoption of the corrected budget resolution to incorporate those changes. I think it's important to note that the nature of the corrections and adjustments as a result of better information obtained since the budget was originally proposed was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. So what we are adopting this evening is, this is a snapshot of all of our operating funds, revenues versus expenditures. The total expenditures is $90,488,390. The revenues are $94,344,875. Our capital projects fund has a total of $21,053,923. And I will just be going over each one of our funds as a summary. So the 2020 budgeted revenues increase in the general fund 6% over the 2019 estimated actuals. Prior to COVID-19, we were projecting a 3% city sales tax growth over the 2019 estimated actual revenue, a 4% increase in license and permits, and a 10% increase for charges and services. In the expenditures for the general fund, the revised budget reflects an increase of 8% over the 2019 estimated actuals. Primarily, that's related to the expenditure increase of $1,041,256 due to the capital project carry forward and the new capital carry forward project that was not originally included in the December 3rd budget. You can see from this slide that the total fund balance was projected at $9,220,772. And in the general fund, I just wanted to call out what the reconciliation items are. So you can see on the revenue adopted from 12/3, library, U.S. Patent Office revenues were not included in the 12/3 budget, nor was a 3% sales tax increase, which was projected at the end of 2019. In the expenditure section for the general fund, Parks and Rec youth was not included at $76,683. Library salaries were not included at $76,999. And the non-departmental, which is a $400,000 transfer to the capital project fund, was actually double counted. And the transfer to the capital projects fund of $641,256 was not included in the 12-3 budget. So moving right along to our internal service funds. In our internal service funds, that is our general services fund, our SURF fund, our risk manager fund, and our self-insurance fund. The biggest item that I wanted to highlight here from the 12-3 adoption to today is that you can see in the green for the SURF budget, the fund balance actually was increased from $2,671,892 to $3,895,018, and that was due to changes in selecting the 2018 actuals from the CAFR and carrying that forward. So no other changes in these funds with the exception of that SURF fund balance, and that one was actually a positive one. Moving along to our enterprise funds, our water fund, sewer fund, sustainable services fund, airport fund, and transportation services fund. So starting off with the water fund, total revenues increase of 6% over the 2019 estimated actual. Operating revenue projections are based off of a 0% rate increase and the implementation of a 1.15 differential for out-of-city accounts. The 2020 revised budgeted operating expenses increased. Oops, I'm sorry, I hopped forward there. Increased $414,113 over the 2019 estimated actuals. And the reconciliation items around the water fund is really pertain to picking up that capital carry forward that was not included in the 2019 12-3 adoption of the budget. And just as we're moving forward with talking about that capital carry forward, I'd like to highlight that these numbers were included. They were just completely expensed out of the 2019 actual section. And to accurately and transparently reflect what the city was actually doing with those projects, we decided to make those changes from the 12-3 meeting. So just wanted to call that out. Another change that we have made since 12-3 is we brought the 2018 actual column back to the CAFR, and this is actually a GFOA best practice. And so when those two items don't match, it's recommended that in the budget, you do a reconciliation. So off to the left there, you can see depreciation, developer assets, compensated employee absences, capital transfers out are items that are different on the basis of accounting, so those would not be included on a budgetary basis. And these items are now included in the back of the budget book as an effort of transparency at the city. The reconciliation items, as I mentioned previously on the water fund, really pertain to picking up the appropriate fund balances from the 2018 CAFR and accurately picking up the correct carry forward capital amount of the $13,500,059,580. Moving on to the sewer fund, the 2020 budgeted revenues increased 3% over the 2019 estimated actual revenues. Operating revenue projections are based on a 3% rate increase and the implementation of the 1.15 differential for out-of-city accounts. 2020 revised budgeted operating expenses increased 4% over the 2019 estimated actual. And the reconciliation items for the sewer fund include a $2.6 million for the debt service that was not originally included in the 12-3 adopted budget. 2018 ending fund balance reflects the CAFR, and an accurate project carry forward is reflected of $8.9 million. So once again, this is taking the 2018 actual back to the CAFR. So the items that you would not include in a budgetary basis of accounting, but you would include in the CAFR include depreciation, developer asset value contributions, compensated employee absences, capital transfers out, and then an EIF grant that was received but not budgeted for, loan premium interest revenue, and then a decrease in other services, which brings you back to that change in net position. As previously mentioned in the other slide, the items that were changed from the 12-3 adopted include that $2.6 million in debt service that was not originally in the 12-3 budget. It also includes the capital carry forward and the ending net position. The ending net position in the 2018 sewer fund did include items that were restricted, and we spoke to our auditors about this, and so we brought that net position down to unrestricted. So that's what that 4.6 million is, and that brings the fund balance down to 1.3 million. In the airport fund, the total 2020 operating revenues increased 10% over the 2019 estimated actual revenues due to the previously increased fees and charges schedule. Parking revenues from on-site parking increased 9%. The 2020 budgeted operating expenses increased 4% over the 2019 estimated actual expenses. And the reconciliation items for the airport include recording grant revenues of $2.16 million and accurately carrying forward the capital of $7.8 million. So once again, this is the 2018 budget to CAFR, and that's that reconciliation item. The items that you would not include, in the budget but are in the CAFR are depreciation expenses, compensated employee absences, and other contracted services, a decrease in that. And once again, just reflecting those reconciliation items. So the revenue adopted was 5.9 million, revenue amended is 7.8, and the fund balance amended is now 8.73 after that capital carry forward is accurately reflected. In the Sustainable Services Fund, total revenues increased 2% over the 2019 estimated actual. Operating expenses increased 9% over the 2019 estimate. Project carry forward is reflected accurately as $75,000, and there was a $50,000 item that was not included in the 12-3 adopted budget from non-departmental. Once again, this is the exercise of the 2018 budget, getting that back to the CAFR, so depreciation, developer asset value contribution, and compensated employee absences. The reconciliation items in the Sustainable Services Fund include that $50,000 in non-departmental, which increased the expenses, and reflecting that capital carry forward accurately as well. In the Transportation Services Fund, total revenues decreased 7% compared to the 2019 estimate. Federal grant funding decreased 2.8% compared to the 2019 estimated actuals. Parking revenues remain stable. Expenditures, the adopted operating budget decreased 6% to the 2019 estimate, and the fund continues to struggle to become financially sustainable. The reconciliation items for this fund include that project carry forward of $316,165 and a capital carry forward for a bus purchase of $264,000. Once again, this is bringing the enterprise funds back to the CAFRs to reflect the differences in accounting. So those items, again, are compensated employee absences, a transfer to capital projects, federal grants that were received and not budgeted, which bring that back to that change in that position. In the Transportation Services Fund, the reconciliation items, as I mentioned, are listed here. So we have the $264,000 for the bus and the $316,315 for the capital carry forward. Moving on to the restricted funds, special revenue funds, those include the 2015 sales tax fund, the 2019 sales tax, the 2005 sales tax, the road impact fee fund, Durango tourism fund, conservation trust fund, and the storm drainage fund, as well as the park development fund. One thing that I wanted to highlight around these special revenue funds, in all cases, the revenues and expenditures, the revenues should never exceed the expenditures. And in 2019, for the 2019 sales tax, the reason why this red block is here is we wanted to reflect that we received half a year of that sales tax and did not spend anything in 19 on that. So one of the largest changes that we wanted to highlight in the 2015 sales tax, the 2019 budget amount and the interfund transfer was not reflected in the 2019 estimated expenditures. So this has been corrected. However, in order to match the revenue and expenditures, this transfer was reduced by $640,542. And in the 2020 budget, the reduction to match the revenues and expenditures is $491,846. Those transfers are reflected accordingly in the capital projects fund. And additionally, the 2018 CAFR actuals for ending fund balances is carried throughout the 2019 budget and the 2020 budget to reflect conservative and more accurate estimates. So once again, a lot of these changes that were made from the 12-3 adoption to today pertain to bringing the numbers back to the CAFR and making sure that we are doing conservative estimates. So our multi-year projects, the capital projects fund, include the general fund, special revenue funds, and enterprise funds. So starting off with our capital projects fund, this is a summary page, and as you can see, this includes the transfer from the general fund, which was increased from $400,000 to $1,041,256, and that was due to the capital project carry forward that was not presented at 12-3. The transfers from the 2015 sales tax fund does reflect that decrease so that we are not transferring more revenues than we have available. And the 2019 sales tax fund reflects a small increase for 2 capital carry forward projects. As you can see as well, in order to make sure we were not transferring too much from the general fund, the GIS, planometric, and contour updates and network storage were removed as general fund projects. And there were some modifications from the 12-3 adopted to today around the projects in multimodal and parks and rec. So those are all outlined there in this fund is what is being proposed today. The Open Space Parks and Trails Fund, the largest changes in this pertain to the capital project carry forward being accurately reflected. Additionally, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were predicting a 3% sales tax increase, so that was included as well in the revenues. Capital Improvements Fund, not a lot of change here from the 12-3 budget, with the exception of, once again, we were expecting a 3% increase in sales tax revenue, so that was reflected in the total revenues for this fund. is a listing of the enterprise capital fund projects for 2020. So just wanted to outline these for the public and for City Council. Not a lot of changes here from 12/3 to today. Just wanted to provide that listing. So moving forward, recommended policies for council consideration. The capital projects fund balance has been depleted by the 2020 projects and the carry forward projects. There will be a future conversation this evening discussing the capital projects. So this is more important than ever, but future projects should be analyzed and funded by annual revenues equaling project expenses, so the city does not fund projects that have dedicated revenues out of the general fund balance. For the budget at large, staff should reevaluate the 5-year capital projects plan that spreads the carry forward into future years to ensure proper long-term sustainability and accurate fund balances, as opposed to showing all carry forward projects and new projects in the current year if they will not be completed. Moving forward, is recommended that the analysis be conducted by the Strategy and Long-Term Finance Advisory Board to determine what forecasting framework for revenues and expense should be used, incorporating inflation, city growth, and sales tax variability at a minimum. But we should also note that with the pandemic, that should also be considered as well. As we move forward as a city and as a finance department, we will be using, GOFA best practices that states the budgetary basis of accounting and the GAAP basis of accounting should be reconciled for the major differences and similarities between the two bases of accounting. And this should be presented as part of the budget. So this budget today does include these changes. We will be starting the budget with the ending fund balances of the previously audited year from the CAFR as the beginning fund balances for the estimated current year. This is the most conservative way to present the budget with those audited numbers. And then prior to presenting the budget, staff should continue to analyze project needs and only carry forward what is actually anticipated for current years. And this concludes my presentation. I just wanted to open it up now for any questions from council.
Questions from council?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we got a copy of this presentation. There's a lot of very useful information in it, and the way that it's presented is very understandable, sometimes in the way that our budget format is. And so thank you very much, Devin.
Yeah, absolutely. I can certainly share this and we'd be happy to post it on the city website.
Yeah, I want to thank Devin. Just incredible analysis and depiction of exactly what we did there or what you've done with the aid of a whole bunch of people. And so thanks for bringing it to this point.
Thank you.
The same sentiment, and thanks to all of the folks that on the staff that worked so hard on all of that. It was a very challenging time in our city's history to be transitioning through. So thank you so much for everything you did.
I also want to recognize the work of everyone. I think it's amazing improvement, and next year we'll hope it's all going to be much easier since you've done the work now. Thank you so much.
That's just wonderful. Anything else from council? I just have to echo councilors' sentiments. What a huge feat and a massive accomplishment. This is a difficult project and a big hurdle to overcome. And I commend staff for handling it so well and putting so much time and energy and effort into this is extremely important for us. And really comforting to know that we can have confidence in our fund balances and where we are today as we move forward in a very difficult time. So the timing couldn't be better. Thank you so much. And with that, I will look for a roll call, please. Or I guess I need a motion first from council, please.
Mayor Youssef, I would make a motion to approve the corrected budget resolution number R-2019-50, adopting the amended 2020 budget for the city of Durango, and by separate action, approve the corrected ordinance number O-2019-26, based on the revised 2020 budget document.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, actually, I would suggest we separate that into two motions. So if you would vote on I suggest we get a second on the resolution, vote on that, and then vote on the ordinance separately. So
Okay.
two totally separate actions. Thank you.
Okay, so I amend my motion to delete the under separate action and approve this corrected ordinance number O-2019-26 for a later motion.
Just to clarify, I want to make sure I understand, Dean. You're suggesting that we vote to adopt the budget first and then we vote to adopt the ordinance second? Is that what I'm saying?
That's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have a second?
I will second.
Discussion from council, please.
Melissa, I'll step in. I think I've been pretty consistent here, but first, again, huge gratitude to everyone who did so much to improve this budget and to have the numbers be as close to accurate as possible. It's a significant amount of work. But I will say that I recognize the need to get a budget approved so we can start looking at our expenses and revenue against that budget. So I understand the imperative. I will, though, share that I've been concerned with this budget and have voted against it. I've been concerned since we first saw it in October, and I voted against it. And those reasons remain the same. The main ones being my concern about the sustainability of the budget because of the items that we added to the expenditure side of the general fund, and my concern about some of the capital improvement projects that I felt were not probably, in my own opinion, the best use of the resources for the greatest good of the most people in town. So I just wanted to share those concerns before we take a vote. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Other councilors?
I also wanted to say, which I didn't sufficiently previously, that the amount of corrections of errors and inaccuracies in the budget was phenomenal. Everyone did such a fabulous job. And I want to thank Devin Schmidt and Wayne McKethan, and also Amber for all of her time spent doing this. The fact that we now balance to a CAFR as far as our beginning fund balances and that we don't have spreadsheet errors in our budget, I'm very satisfied with the accuracy and the quality of that presentation, and I just really, really appreciate that. The budget as revised includes some items and projects that I do not support, and I just want to reiterate that comment. That's all. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Excellent. I think that we can therefore look for a motion to approve an amended and corrected budget. Or, I'm sorry, the motion's on the table. Then I'm sorry, if we can have a roll call, please.
So this is the vote on resolution 2019-50. Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie.
Yes?
Councilor Baxter.
No.
Councilor Noseworthy.
No.
And Mayor Youssef.
Yes. All right. With that, Amber.
So I believe that up next you have the motion on the table for the corrected ordinance.
Well, and I will follow up the continued motion to approve the second part of that, which is to approve the corrected ordinance number O-2019-26 based on the revised 2020 budget document.
I'll second.
Discussion from council.
So yes, thank you. Since the budget was adopted by council, the support for the ordinance is a matter, the previous ordinance in December was also inaccurate. The numbers were wrong. They didn't actually balance the budget, and now they do. They represent the budget as council by 3-2 vote just adopted it. So I just want to point that out. It is also accurate.
Great. Further discussion from council? I think we're ready for another roll call then.
So this is on ordinance 2019-26. Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie.
Yes?
Councilor Baxter.
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy.
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef.
Yes. Great. I think with that, Amber, are we moving on to the city update?
No, we have number 12.3.
Oh, so thank you. Oh, can't miss, but very important next step. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next item on the agenda is item 12.3, which is discussion and possible action to consider the approval of deferring capital projects as a proactive measure to mitigate the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Durango. This is the first step in what will likely be a number of steps that will come forward to council regarding adjustments that we are making in response to the impact on our economy and to our community from the COVID-19 pandemic. In response to these impacts, this agenda item is my recommendation to council to defer projects in the following funds: the Open Space, Parks and Trails quarter-cent tax fund, 2015 half-cent sales tax, 2019 half-cent sales tax, the general fund, and then all of the enterprise funds. The items are laid out in the agenda documentation in tables to clearly demonstrate either the reduction in scope or cost of the project and amounts that will be going back into the fund balance, or the project in its entirety that would be deferred and then come back to council at a later date. I want to make sure that it is clear that this is a deferral and it doesn't illustrate the lack of need for the projects on the list. This is a proactive measure. We are currently running a number of iterations of projections and to analyze what the reductions need to look like in order to address the future needs related to revenues versus expenditures coming in. So I'm happy to take questions from council related to the items that are recommended on in this agenda documentation. And then I will be asking for, if council is supportive of a motion to approve the following projects and these amounts to be deferred and the funds to return back to the appropriate fund.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we do have council questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, Amber, thank you. Thank you for the work you've done these past couple of weeks to find potential savings in the budget, reduction in expenditures. I have a comment. First of all, I think what we're doing, regardless of COVID-19, is probably the way that the city management should be moving, and we've discussed that in the past, and we'll be going forward with a capital improvement project allocation process, but this speeds up it in some ways. So I just have a couple of, I sent my questions in to you, and I don't want to take up all the time, so I just want to start with I'm concerned that we be aggressive in pulling those capital improvement projects back and holding them and then allocating them later once we've had a chance to look at revenues to expenditures. So some of them, it's proposed going forward, and I questioned it. So on the 2005 tax, I'm curious why we're going forward with the 706, 959, and the 500,000 that would be available for purchase when we don't have any discussion around a purchase. And my question is, shouldn't we consider pulling that back and putting it in some kind of a reserve, and then looking at it when we have something specific, rather than going forward with it and then having to claw it back?
Yes, so that is a great question. And the current funding, in this item is for the acquisition of open space and is requested to be maintained in here. The item related to this would be in negotiation, and we have talked briefly about the possibility of these funds being a potential use for our good faith effort for Durango Mesa Park. But if council would like to defer these funds and come back at a later date, the council can make that decision. The way that I looked at the funds and what projects to immediately defer were based off of some targets that we were looking at. And so I'll leave that up to the council if you'd like to increase the number of projects. And then in relation to, did you have another item on?
I didn't know how the mayor wanted to proceed, if she wanted to have discussion around any questions or if she wanted to just have questions answered.
There we go. Sorry, I had to unmute. I do have a lot of questions, Councillor Noseworthy, so I'm not quite certain as to I guess I can ask you, are you comfortable with Amber's answer? Would you like to feedback from your councillors?
I think you could just at the end see what makes sense, if it makes sense for anything. And some of them are just, one question, and are we addressing safety? The main questions are around the 2005 and the 2015 sales tax.
Right.
So I'd be happy just to make sure we get the questions addressed, and then maybe any discussion later if that works for you.
Okay, that sounds good.
Perfect.
Might be more efficient. Thank you.
Okay. So Amber and the council have all seen my questions, but the public hasn't. So I did want to just kind of share that. I also asked why doing an economic study now, given this time in COVID, and then it also seemed that it came up late in the CIP project. So that's just a question, comment. The main concern I have, you're suggesting pulling out the 266,431 from the right-of-way purchase for a trail going north, and I totally support that. My question is, and many of us have gotten a lot of feedback from the community affected by the extension of the Animas River Trail to the north. So my question is, what's the status, or maybe this is for a different report, but how are we going to address the neighbors' privacy concerns and the shade cover for this area? In October, Parks and Rec indicated neighbors' concerns would be addressed through significant contingency savings. My suggestion would be to take, if we don't have those contingencies, to take this 266,431 and allocate it for addressing the neighbors' concerns in an appropriate manner.
So thank you for that idea. This is, I think, in following what we've been asked by council to do, it would be appropriate to remove this project because this is specifically for a property lease with or property acquisition from the Durango Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad in a contractual agreement. So this would be de-obligating or putting these funds back into the fund balance, and should council wish to take these funds and use them for a different use, which would be to add to the Animas River Trail North extension for trees and fences or items that were scoped out of the project when the project was awarded in order to come in on budget. That would be a discussion that I would hope that council could have. I don't feel comfortable that that would be something that staff could do. And then on this item, in relation to the details of the contingencies available on the Animas River Trail North project, I do not have those numbers with me today because I didn't intend for us to be having that conversation, but I know that the project is underway and continues under construction. There are some contingency funds left, I am aware of that, but I am not confident in saying that there are enough contingency funds to be able to implement all of the items that were previously discussed with the neighbors.
So we could have that at a future discussion, which would be great. I want to address all some of the concerns, so I want those that have written and called us to know that we're raising that issue. I have two on I had the restrooms in Rotary Park, because it's showing that we have $592,743 remaining out of a $600,000 allocation. And so I question the wisdom of going forward with that, given these times, and maybe that is something we should be thinking about delaying.
So that item, I had a good deal of discussion about this item when I was looking at what items to remove. And this item I left in because of a couple of things. One, we had our internal staff do the design documents of this, so we were able to see some cost savings. I also looked at, one of the items that I looked at was the ability for us to get a local contractor. I think it is critical for us as a city, when we can do a capital improvement project with a local contractor, to have that as one of our priorities in terms of what we would look at maintaining versus cutting. And in addition to the fact that we're hoping to have a local contractor on this item, that would put money back in to keep some of our local folks in jobs in this circumstance. And then as well as that, this is the highest use park. We've used this park for the weddings and the celebrations and community items. So there were a number of factors, but really that local contractor and keeping jobs and some money flowing into our economy.
I'm all for buying local. A couple of quick ones. The maintenance, we have $55,987 going carry forward for the maintenance park shop, but I thought that project was finished.
So the construction of the building is finished. There were two outstanding items related to landscaping the grounds, finishing up that landscaping, and then fencing to maintain the safety and security of that facility. So the construction was done, but those two items were outstanding.
Thank you so much. Three more quick questions. Camino Crossing, you're suggesting that we move the $350,000 for the design, and I know the community's been real interested in that. Can you give us an update and the rationale for, is it a delay, a short delay? What is the thinking on removing that approved project?
So again, that one was a deferral, hoping that it will come back to council when we have the information from the study. So once the study comes back, we will know what the recommended sequence of preferred alternatives or alternatives that are feasible. And the study will be recommending a short, mid, and a long-term solution. And we've recently ordered a signal warrant study for 12th Street. But until we know what that's going to look like during these circumstances, it felt that it would be the best option for us to put the money back into the fund balance and then come forward to council if it's appropriate.
Thank you. I just wanted the folks that have been advocating for that to have a sense of hearing what the thinking is. Community Forest Plan has $78,000 in it as a carry forward, which I think might make some people happy to see that many more trees being planted. Is that the status?
Yes, so the Community Forest Plan, this total includes a $38,000 carry forward from 2019 and that additional appropriation from this year. And these funds will provide for approximately 75 trees with irrigation, as well as some removal of Russian olive trees in partnership with the Mountain Studies Institute.
Wonderful, thank you. It's just getting the questions from the folks who are concerned about trees. And then the $50,000 that we talked about doing for the economic study, I know that Parks and Rec and Councilor Bettini could talk to this, have talked about, some on that advisory board have talked about the need for a reserve study so we can get our handle on what we can anticipate for future maintenance costs. And I was wondering the possibility of switching those two out possibly, since one came up at the last minute and the other one has been discussed, the reserve study.
So at this point in time, there is a contract with RPI Consulting, a local consulting firm, to do that study. And because it is currently under contract, there are a few items that can be conducted during this phase in terms of data. And then the project will need to be put on hold until we get back to a more stable situation and be able to finish out that study. What else do we have here? So currently, they're gathering essential data from fiscal year 17, 18, and 19. The consultant has been checked in with, and he is flexible in terms of timeline and delays, and is not intended or anticipated to result in an increased cost to the study. And I think that if the reserve question comes up, that's definitely a question that council has had conversations about. I would suggest that since we're currently under contract, that would be an additional item to discuss.
Thanks, and it may come up in the 2021 deputy. Two questions that are similar on the Water Enterprise Fund and the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Some of the projects that were delayed, in both of those categories, look like they were around maintenance, and I wanted to make certain that does delaying these projects compromise our maintenance or safety of either the College Mesa treatment plant or the water treatment capabilities in the enterprise fund? And then does the delayed projects compromise or our maintenance or safety of our sewer capabilities? Or are they just being moved because we can't get them started and completed this year?
Exactly. So in working with the department heads, these projects we're talking about these projects specifically, but each of the projects were evaluated based on the demand for the project and the timing of initiation and completion based on the schedule that was provided to City Council. And the projects were approved as an acceptable level to defer, and that we looked at a risk analysis and then the operational needs in order to decide if this was an appropriate project to defer. And I have been confirmed with the department heads that yes, these projects can be deferred, and it's not because we don't need them, and it doesn't set us up for future issues with the projects that we're currently moving forward with.
Great. Three more questions. The Airport Enterprise Fund, they only reduced a little bit, like $57,000 out of their $8.9 million project. And I was just wondering that with anticipated reduction in revenues, would there also need to be a reduction in some of these projects to cover other operations?
So the airport is an enterprise fund, as you know, and it is a bit unique, especially with the CARES Act. So the federal bill that came down that provides support, there's a good deal of funding that's appropriated for the airport. So that helps backfill any operational revenue that is lost. And so we are not anticipating the same decrease in percentage for the operational revenues for the airport. And in addition to that, we have less than $225,000 of our appropriated projects utilize the unrestricted fund. So this was an appropriate amount for that fund because everything else really relies on those grants and then those restricted revenues.
Thanks so much. Transportation and parking. I know that you were willing to defer those meter replacement improvements, and my question was, is this supported? Would the Business Improvement District prefer that we actually get these meters replaced now more than ever, or just a question of the timing of it?
So this, the amount that we are putting forward as a release, we have some additional funds in there to continue this project. This project is a 2-year project and had a significant amount of carry forward that we are releasing. So there will still be some yokes and meters that are replaced. However, at this point, we really wanted to look at considering the sustainability of that fund and the risk. Running the transit service and the meters that are currently in operation are fully operational. So we felt that it was in the best interest of the community to take this item out, and we can come back to council if it's an appropriate project.
Great. And my last question is, given the hard work that you and all the department heads have done on this, and I do thank you for that, what would be the process for making further delays or decisions regarding previously approved capital improvement projects should our revenues to expenditures not be in sync? And thank you for all your work.
Of course, thank you. And I'd like to give a huge thanks to the department heads for all the work that they've put in to help with this. So in looking at this, like I said at the beginning, this is the first step, and we will continue to analyze what the revenues look like. The next phase of this is really looking at the operational piece and what items that we can restrict spending on. We have implemented a number of items to date, and we'll carry forward. Specifically this week, the department heads are putting pencil to paper and providing me with detailed information on recommendations for restricted spending and these austerity measures. And so we will be coming back to council in the near future with updates. And if we get into a situation moving forward, really depending on how does this look like a V recovery, or is it a U-shaped recovery? Is this going to take 1 year? Will it be 2 years? Will it be greater than that? We will continue to have these conversations because, as you know, 2021 budget season is right around the corner.
Thanks so much, Amber.
Thank you.
I had less questions as just kind of some comments. But I did have a question to follow up on Councilor Noseworthy's question about the Camino Crossing study. And I thought that that study was finished and that it was to be published on the website. Amber, do you know what the status of that is?
So there was information to be that was the draft study is completed, and I believe it was posted on the website. I would need to check in with Sarah Dodson to ensure that that did happen. And so the draft study would be online with up for public comment and information and feedback from the community. And then again, we still need to have that signal warrant study completed. It is underway. And once we have the information from the signal warrant study, that'll also be rolled into the final recommendation.
Well, so I did look, I think the day before yesterday, and I did not see the community study done. So it would be great if we could get that out there. There are a lot of community members wanting to look at that draft study, see what it recommends, and take into account their thoughts and to be able to make comments on that. So thank you. Appreciate that. I did an analysis of each fund based upon its current revenue projected in the 2020 budget, its expenses, and then did revenue decreases of 30 and 50% possibilities. And I realized that not all funds will have the same amounts of increases or decreases, but there were a couple that concerned me. And one of them was the Capital Improvements Fund, the 2005, which is the Florida debt service and the library debt service. And I finished this very late this afternoon, so I apologize for not getting it to you before the meeting. However, if you do a decrease in 30% revenue, sales tax revenue, which would directly affect that fund, we're looking at a negative fund balance, and so we would be unable to pay our debt service. So that's just a comment. I'm not asking you to say anything about it right now. I just want to be sure that that's taken into account when we have future conversations. The other one is very, very similar. It's the 2019 sales tax fund. And this one is, I took the deferred, even included the deferred projects in it, and we have the same problem with that. We actually can't pay for all the capital projects if we lose 30% of our sales tax revenue. So that's another one I'd like to see you highlight when you're looking at it. And the sewer enterprise fund, if, you know, I have no idea how this pandemic will actually affect our water and sewer collections. It's not a sales tax, so it's not as easy to define. But if we do lose a significant portion of our revenue, will be, even with our deferred projects at this point, as they said, will be very, very tight on our ending fund balance in that fund. So those were the three that red flags went up when I looked at that. So I would really like to have some more conversation about that. And that leads to my next comment, which is that the CIP immediate deferrals are a really great start at how we might approach the financial impact that we're going to have to the city from this pandemic, from not just sales tax revenues, but all sorts of fees and other assessments. So I think what we need to do is we actually need to have a policy defined, and I I've sent you some ideas about what that might look like. But until we know what we're really recommending is a revenue reduction in each of the funds, we don't know if the current CIP reductions are enough. And I know you've expressed that you think there'll need to be more. I would agree with you. I would heartily agree with you, and not in a good way. And meaning I'm not happy about it. But also, until we know what those revenue reductions are going to be, we also don't know what expense reductions we're going to have to make overall. So I think that that's a huge priority. And if we have to have a special study session to discuss those details, I would completely support that, because I think that you need to be able to move forward with those reductions, whatever they may be. And I realize it's a fluid situation. It's going to change constantly, that we'll have to be revisiting it. But I really feel that we need to have this conversation sooner rather than later. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is that I feel the CIP reductions or deferrals are a great start, but it's not the big picture. And I appreciate that you are currently working on what could the revenue reductions look like and what could the expense reductions look like. And so now that we have an adopted budget, this leads into that. This is great, because now we'll be able to do financial comparisons for what our actuals are to what we think they will be, and it'll make it much easier. So I look forward to seeing those comparisons and being able to do a really, really good job moving forward to deal with the impact of this pandemic. So thank you very much for all your work and all the work of the department heads for starting this process. And I know it's going to be an ongoing one. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Well, on a more positive note, and thanks, Kim, for doing that analysis. And I think that's, that we need to be looking at it. And I know staff is in terms of those terms. I think the other, for the public as well as fellow counselors to know, what the other part of what staff is doing currently is dealing with the evaluation of the CARES Act and the various mechanisms that the federal government is offering to backfill our losses as a community, as well as the businesses within the community. So you should know that, the fourth stage of the federal assistance programs is being edited right now. And so I know Colorado Association of Ski Towns has sent letters on behalf of all our members, Durango being one, to all our congressional folks, as well as to Governor Polis, relative to how that $2.3 billion gets split up. And so that's pretty much a given, and what our take of that will be. It's a formula intended to evenly divide that amongst rural communities in Colorado. But so we'll get what we get out of that. But the next one, the fourth edition, is the one that really has opportunity for the federal government to help us out of this mess. So, and that would help us. The legislation that we're asking for is that the restriction be lifted that would allow us then to use federal funds to backfill some of the losses in sales tax. And that being the key ingredient that is particularly applicable in Durango, that we could utilize to fend off another round of cuts on our part. So with all these things in motion right now, and I know staff is totally on top of those aspects as well, what kinds of opportunities are there, both state and federal, to apply to our situation, then we'll know in a couple, 3 weeks as to what the hit is and what the benefits will be. So I think this is an appropriate amount of cut. Right now, it's the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and I'm certainly opposed to reallocation of any funds into, helping out, new fences or anything like that at this point, because everybody is in this together. So I think I like the cuts that have been proposed. I think they're prudent and as to address the concerns that Councilor Noseworthy had. I think that we do want to make sure that we aren't causing additional deferred maintenance, that anything that we do is not really going to cause us more money down the road. And I think that staff has looked at it acutely from that standpoint. So, yeah, I'd like to hear from the rest of the council, but I'd be ready to make a motion.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to compliment the staff again. I think one of the things that the public doesn't see, and even now during this kind of epidemic situation we don't see as closely as we might have once, is that Amber and her team are working every other day with a group here locally to strategize how to respond to this very unique circumstance that we're all in. And I just wanted to say I appreciate the leadership that they've shown during this time. It's been an extraordinary time for someone to be in an interim city manager position. If you think about all of the things that we've gone through, we started tonight with just trying to finish up a budget that should have been done back in December. And then to do that without a finance director, to do that without a city manager, to do that with some pretty short tenured city councilors, including myself, all just getting up to speed. I think there's been a lot of challenge, and then to have to face this circumstance, which there's not a really good game plan to do. I think you guys have done an amazing job. You've been an amazing leader, Amber, and thanks to all of the department heads for really looking at their budgets and looking at their capital programs and getting this far down the line already, this quickly, to secure our financial future. It gives me such a great deal of confidence in your leadership and your willingness to adjust. And I'm looking forward to future conversations, but I think this is an appropriate amount of change this early in the process. And like Dean, I'd like to see what some of those government projects look like and how they impact the budget before we make larger decisions. But we're going to have to confront those here coming soon. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you, and you're welcome.
There, okay, I can speak again. Thank you all counselors, and thank you again to staff. I do agree that these are good first steps, difficult first steps, and the rest of the agenda doc will suggest that there may be more to come. Amber, I was wondering if you may, you don't have to, but there have been discussions around potential next steps. We all know that likely we will have to take more steps, but this is a start, and we will proceed forth. It's the moving target. There's so many different moving parts, and it's fluid, and things are changing daily, if not sometimes by the hour. So I recognize that we will continue to address this, and it's going to be our order of importance, the most important thing we do now until we get into a position where we're feeling confident. But this is a great first step.
Thank you. So we're looking for, I guess, a motion if council is ready.
I'd make a motion to, let me pull this up so I kind of say it right. To approve the deferring of capital projects as a proactive measure to mitigate economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'll second it.
Further council discussion? Great. May we have a roll call, please?
So Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brookie?
Yes.
And Mayor Youssef?
Yes. Great, and now I think we move on to your city update, Amber.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mayor Youssef and city councilors. So I have an update for this evening. I have one item related to the public comment that we received about the Wi-Fi at the library. The Wi-Fi at the library is turned on during the day. So if individuals who do not have access to the internet are seeking access to the internet, they can still go to the library and access that Wi-Fi from outside to apply for unemployment and all their other needs that they may have. The Wi-Fi is on during the day. It turns off at 6 p.m. and will continue off until, 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. So it's off at night. And then I wanted to let the community know that we're currently continuing to waive the $10 late fee for late payments on utility bill accounts. We will still be sending out delinquent account notification letters just so folks know. However, we will not be shutting anyone's service off. We will also waive the $40 delinquent fee on accounts in March and April. And all service fees on utility bills are still owed. So the fees are still owed to us, but we are not charging those late fees, and we're waiving the delinquent fees. And the staff in customer service is accommodating customers and offering payment plans for 2 to 6 months to pay off their bills with no additional fee. We're continuing to assess this and make sure that it does meet the needs of our community moving forward, but that's where we're at today. In terms of other items that we're doing to assist our community through this pandemic and the impacts of it, is we will be relaxing the regulations governing the temporary sign code related to banners, teardrop banners, and sandwich boards. And this will allow local businesses that are in operation to advertise their services. And then the temporary modification to these regulations is permissible under the emergency declaration. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that the community has a chance to hear this. We'll be issuing a press release on this and reaching out to the business community. We're also working on an order that relates to the emergency declaration, which is an order to defer sales tax for certain businesses. I will be sending this information to council once it's ready. But per the emergency declaration, we don't have to wait until the next city council meeting. I can move forward with that order, and we'll make sure that council has that information, and then we inform the business community as well. Excuse me. And the reason that I think that this is very important is that if we can save 1, 2, or 3 of our small businesses, then it's worth it for us to have the lack of sales tax for that period of time, because we're all in this together, and if that's something that we can do, we want to move forward with that. We're continuing to evaluate scenarios for reduced revenues like we talked about before. We have multiple targets, and we have multiple targets that we're looking at, and we're also looking at those reductions in spending, and we'll continue that conversation with council. And then I would like to ask the community if you could please stay tuned to the Friday update that we have with San Juan Basin Public Health, La Plata County, and our community partners. We have our electeds, as well as the city and county manager and Leanne Jalon, our public health director, on those recorded updates. We'd also like to extend a thank you to the Durango Herald for posting those updates on the Herald, providing yet another way for our community to know what's going on. And then again, San Juan Basin Health is the lead on information. The city has the COVID-19 emergency webpage up and active. We do have links to all of our community partners so that the community has a, if you will, a one-stop shop on our webpage to be able to get information about what's happening and have information from all the different sectors. In relation to the other piece of public comment we received earlier today, the Community Foundation is set up, is taking donations, and is doing applications for grants for those that are in need. And that link is also on our webpage. So I would hope that community members in need or community members who are able to give could go to the link for the Community Foundation on our page, the SURF Fund, and hopefully we can help connect those folks. In terms of the financial report, we did talk about actuals. We have posted the sales tax reports on the city's website. We're finalizing those actual reports, the FMR financial management report, that will be posted and updated with those sales tax reports, and we're hoping to have that done within the next week. We just want to make sure that those numbers are right and it's clear and easily understandable. So stay tuned for that, and I will send council a link when those are up. And I think that's what I've got.
Okay, thank you, Amber. A little slow to respond, kind of hard to get used to this. Thank you very much for that update. And with that, we will move into council reports and actions. And start with any counselor that would like to start, please. Chris, Councilor Bertine.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I just wanted to announce to the community, there's an article in the Durango Herald just posted while we were actually online here. It's about the trail system and the fact that I think most of the counselors, though I've only spoken to one, but I think most of the ability to keep the trails, city trails, open space open during this time for your health and well-being, and allow everybody to use it. Of course, we're concerned about social distancing and making sure that everybody that's out on the trails is out there only with their family members or people in their own home, and that they're staying at least 6 feet away from each other at a very minimum, preferably 10. And that our primary concern at this time is to make sure we're safe and that our common area spaces are safe and causing our healthcare system to be overwhelmed at this time. So please take heed of the notices at all the trailheads that are being posted by Trails 2000 and by our trail staff, and make sure that you're staying away from each other and riding away from each other, and really encouraging others to do the same, so that we can all keep those spaces open if possible during this time and make sure that they're available for all. Thanks. Excellent, thank you. I'm just going to add a little bit to that, and then we can go to Councilor Noseworthy. I had a conversation with our officer, Chief Brammer, and he did tell me that he's been working really hard with our Parks and Recreation Director, Kathy Metz, and they're strategizing together, and they're really working on increasing coverage so that they can be more visible at the trailheads, reminding people, talking to people, and also our police officers now have 2 e-bikes, so they are getting around much more onto our trails, and they're doing it intentionally to try to just remind people and make sure that we can keep these wonderful amenities that we have available to all of us to enjoy. So you might be seeing our police officers out there on some e-bikes joining you and for some fun. And so, Councilor Noseworthy.
Thank you. So I also would like to give a shout out to the emergency team that's working on this. I know they're meeting daily. Some of them are meeting hourly and some are meeting daily, and the council is also involved 3 times a week. But I also want to give a shout out to the community. I mean, from the folks that are making masks, and I've got mine, to the Maker Lab that's working on personal protective equipment, to Stone Age that's working on a fund effort to get more masks and equipment. I checked in with Nina this past week, and they've been working out at Purple Cliffs, working on things. There's a shower out there, other wash stations. There's been a food drive for the immigrants, to support the immigrants in our community, and that's been up and running. And I'm hearing of all kinds of people who are checking in on other people, and I think, you know, I'm always overwhelmed by Durango and the county's generosity, and I just want to give a shout out to the community, because once again, you're pitching in. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It is what unites us during this time as the community. Thank you, Councilor Noseworthy. Councilor Baxter, would you? Yes, please.
Thank you. And to follow up with what Councilor Bertine and Councilor Noseworthy said, it appears that over the world, the things that we appreciate, such as being outdoors, are oftentimes we stand to lose them when people don't follow what they need to do in order to keep them safe. So I want to encourage people also that this is what keeps everybody's sanity. So please keep it together and observe our social distancing guidelines, so that not only are you well, but we're all well, and we can still get outside and do what we need to do. I did have I had a question on, I had asked Attorney Nelson, Mr. Nelson, about the Tabor Reserve, and when that was, we were capable of using it. And his response, if I understand it correctly, was that because the city has declared a state of emergency, the Tabor Reserve is open to us using it for things that we need to use it for operations, et cetera. But the part of the question that I didn't get answered was, what are the requirements for replenishing it? If we use that, what's the consequences. And I was just wondering if Mr. Nelson was available to answer that.
I can, and there's really nothing in the code that dictates how that's replaced. I think it says it has to be replaced within 2 years, but it doesn't dictate, and I don't have the code in front of me, so I'm flying from memory here, but I'm pretty sure that's what it says. And I apologize for not getting back to you on that. It's, there's been a lot of questions, and we're all a little behind on our emails. So there's no particular process set forth for that, so I think it would have to be part of the regular budget discussions, and council would have to determine how to replenish that. But the code does provide for the access to those emergency funds in the case of an emergency such as this one.
Thank you. That, as we discussed before, I thought that was the case. And I've also discussed with Ms. Blake about the possibility that some of the federal support monies might be able to be used to replenish that. That's a question. To replenish the Tabor Reserve if those reserve dollars were used for specific items that qualified under the federal guidelines. So I wanted to make sure that you also knew that I had asked that question, because that'll be something that we'll have to investigate. It could be to our benefit for sure once the federal dollars are determined how they're going to be benefiting. So, thank you. I also had a question about, originally we had agreed that we were going to have the results of the bids for the North Art 32nd Street project discussed this evening. And so I was wondering when we might be doing that. I believe they were opened on March 24th.
I can answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the bids were opened and the project has been deferred. And as you will notice in the tables, there was still $175,000 for the the 32nd Street Bridge project out of the 2005 money. Those funds are based on council's recommendation and request to do additional engineering design and look at alternatives for the crossing of 32nd Street with that project. So Parks and Recreation staff is ready. They were prepared for this evening, but based on the fact that this was our first virtual meeting and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, as well as wanting to make sure we had enough time to discuss the budget and then the deferral of projects, I asked for that to be moved. So we can put that on a future council agenda and have that presentation from the Parks and Recreation staff with all of that information to council, and I can also have Parks and Rec staff provide an update to council via email prior to that, if that's what council would like.
That's excellent. I think that our next city council meeting, that would be a great conversation to have, the bids and also those two options, because we had so much public participation. Everybody was looking forward to hearing what the results are, and I think it's in this time of unprecedented challenge, I think continuing to do the standard things that we say we're going to do and that we would normally do, I think having that normality going side by side to these challenges is a really beneficial thing for everyone. So thank you.
Great. So I'm hearing, Melissa, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if, so there's a desire to have a discussion around looking at the three various options that we deferred for tonight. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. We were going to originally, we had on our schedule to look at 3 different bridge options this evening. Those discussions were deferred because there was a recommendation for staff to defer the project completely for 2020. So now I'm hearing that there's a continued desire to have those discussions. Am I understanding correctly that you want to have a discussion around all 3 of those projects?
I think we need to hear the information that we had asked for, because just because the project's deferred doesn't mean that we should just ignore it and it goes away for a year and no one ever talks about it. I think that it's a very pertinent conversation still, and to know the answer to the responses to the bids, to know the information about the options, because if we're planning for the future and this is a very long downturn, then it's a different conversation. But if it's a short downturn and it comes back, we may have time to make a decision about this, or we might not. So, but I think we need to be knowledgeable about it and not put that off.
Okay, and I would like to hear from other counselors and also staff, only because I think you're bringing up a valid point. I'm also very cognizant of the fact that we're under an emergency ordinance right now to operate. Staff is working around the clock, 7 days a week, trying to address our current situation. Additional meetings that we have and we put on takes them away from the addressing our current situation. So I want to make sure that there's council support to put them back onto evaluation of the bridges at this time.
Well, if I understood correctly, they were fully prepared to do it tonight already. So that information's there and organized.
For all three bridges, Amber, or for all three, you were going to be prepared to talk about the underpass and the East 2nd Avenue and the other?
So I have not seen the presentation from Parks and Rec staff yet. However, they are prepared, they have the information, and we can have that information for you. I don't know if it's all three alternatives. I can't answer that question. But based on what council requested, the staff was ready to go.
Okay, other counselors, what are you thinking, please?
I thought there was money in there for a more in-depth look, some actual engineering quantification of each of those three alternatives, but maybe I was wrong about that. I thought that this would allow this deferment of the bridge at this point would allow consultants to actually be able to develop more informed responses to each of those requests that we made in this time, in this point of time of deferral. So I was hoping that in addition to whatever quick response that staff would have, that the money would have been allocated to actually pay the consultant to come back with informed assessment of each of those options. If I'm incorrect in that, then that may, I'll stand corrected, but I just thought that this would buy us some time for that work to be done, and that would be looked at in a 2 to 3 month time frame as opposed to this week, for instance. I think there's plenty of things to talk about this week besides that, personally.
So my first priority, I know we have a study session for next week, I think it's the 14th, and it's, if I understand it correctly, it's been on the schedule for some time to talk about some of our high-level fiscal policy considerations. What kind of amount do we want in reserve funds, issue reserve funds? So my first priority would be going forward with a study session next week that's a high-level fiscal discussion in the time of COVID-19, kind of related to the budget. That is my first. I understand if staff has the budget, the materials prepared for the three bridge options, I would like to see them, but I don't see the same urgency as I have of looking at the high level and providing a policy guidance to the interim city manager, and so that we can all go forward with a budget readjustment as needed.
If I could ask Councilor Nosworthy, I mean, in this day, right now, I mean, how can we seriously have a good conversation about what's appropriate in terms of reserves, given the fact that we've just done the first round of cuts? We'll anticipate probably another round of cuts. You know, we know what revenues we have. We know what we have to keep. I don't know that now's the time for a long-term policy discussion about how much money we should have in reserves in any fund when we know that it's going to be a stressful year to 2 years. You know, I think that's, you know, given this current situation, is it not a smarter idea to have the long-term strategic finance committee work on those issues and bring them back to us in an appropriate time?
So Councilor Brookie, my issue is, with the exception of the SURF fund, all of the reserves took a hit because we're balancing to CAFR. So particularly Parks and Rec, the 2015 took a significant hit in reduction in the what's appropriate and the others. So I think even as we start to think about budgeting for 2021, we need to think about, do we really only want to have $185,000 in our reserve fund for the 2015 sales tax, or do we want to try to also build that up as we think about the coming budget? So I think those are the questions that we as a council should be thinking about now, because they guide the budget discussion for 2021. They could guide our other actions as well. It's not just paver, but each of those individual reserves. Thanks.
Dean, I have a question for you. Are you suggesting that council not have discussions about finances in the future because of COVID, that we don't take a leadership role in where we're going as a city? I'm not quite understanding what you're suggesting.
No, that's a total misunderstanding. I'm just simply saying that at this point, it's I believe that conversation was fairly fictitious relative to. Of course, we want more reserve funds. You know, the more the better. Right now, we're in triage. You know, we can't for this next 12-month period figure that out except for our staff to be in response to the current conditions. I think I'm certainly not discouraging conversation about that, but I don't think, I question how fruitful that conversation would be in the next 3 to 4 weeks, quite honestly. There's some policy discussion, perhaps at a retreat when that happens about that, but right now we're in triage, more or less. And so I think, what else could you say but put more money in reserves when you have it?
I don't actually agree with that, because there are some reserves that may possibly be ripe for not being so high. I also think that we have to assume that we're going to come out of this, and we are going to be developing a budget for 2021. And supposedly, theoretically, hopefully, we won't be in the middle of this pandemic anymore. We will be on the other side of it. And if we don't have policies in place or conversations about what does 2021 look like, ideally, yes, not with the impact that obviously we're going to have less revenue, but we're going to have these conversations. And I don't think we should throw them all into a very short time period when we start working on the 2021 budget. I really think one of our topics for this next study session is how do we increase sales tax generation? And that's going to be a prime question for us after this. Sales tax generation is going to be an amazingly challenging issue for us. And so since that's one of the topics, it was going to be a challenge for us anyway. Now it's going to be even more so. So what can we do to do that? That's one of them. Another one has to do with accurate and timely reporting for our finances and our budget development and review process. And that has nothing to do with what the numbers are in the next 6 months to 12 months. That has to do with what do those reports look like, what information do we want to have on them, because they're going to be incredibly important for us to know whether or not we are achieving our goals going forward in meeting the challenges that this pandemic is presenting with us. So let's talk about what do we need those reports to say? How do we make good choices? What are our informed decision-making process? That's what these topics are about. They're not about just the absolute dollars.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to just add and see if Councilor Bettine wanted to add anything, but I think I hear what both of you are saying, and I don't disagree with any of the councilors. I absolutely understand what Councilor Berkey is suggesting, which is the fact that we are in emergency planning mode and emergency response mode right now. We're seeing it from our staff, and we're seeing them work extremely hard to focus their attention on even just getting us the agenda doc that they got to us today. Obviously, it took a huge amount of time. So there's a need there. I see a need to focus. And I also see a need to move forward and start planning for our future. We want to, and we will. The question is when. I'm glad we're having this discussion because it's one I wanted to bring up, which is the agenda for next week. And quite frankly, we need to realize that these meetings take a lot of time for staff to put together. They're going to pull them away from other opportunities. So we want to be really careful with how we're focusing their attention. If they're looking at, we of course want to talk about reserves balances. None of us are going to deny that our reserve balances are extremely important, but where we are this year and where we go with those may be very different than a long-term policy that we put in place for an ideal year or for a situation where we aren't looking at a 30% decline in revenue. So I see them as kind of two different things. I also saw us plan out a study session calendar that had 6 months. We were kind of getting through that originally by end of July, August. And so, you know, we have more time this year also to discuss some of this. And so I want to be cognizant of our need to also make sure we are not inundating, that we are giving our staff room to appropriately respond to the crisis and pandemic that we're dealing with today.
Sorry, if I understand correctly, or maybe I don't, but are you suggesting that we not have a study session next week?
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I was not on unmute. I wanted to have council discussion about that, and it was one of my items to bring up in council discussions and actions. And I'd like to hear from our staff about that. There's a couple things that I want to talk about. The fact that we are in a virtual meeting, study sessions I find are so helpful when we can work together and we can collaborate together, and it's an opportunity to run things by staff and I think that a study session is going to be much more difficult to have virtually. And if we can get to a point where we're having our meetings live again here the second week of May, that would be a wonderful thing. And we can get back to, you know, the normal interaction that relationships have, and that we're, you know, can vet some of these ideas much more easily, I think, than we can virtually. So I am concerned about trying to appropriately vet too many items. What we had on the agenda for our next meeting was a lot of items that I think deserve a lot of council discussion and careful consideration. And I'm thinking it's going to be a difficult environment virtually to be directing staff on some of those, especially given that we're in a very different situation than we thought that we were going to be in when we originally scheduled that study session.
Could I jump in, Melissa? I also think, though, that we need to provide the interim city manager with some guidance right now with regard to the budget. I mean, there's a question of, do we balance this budget without tapping into any of our reserves? And that's, to me, a council decision. And we could have a pretty robust conversation around the policy things that will help guide her and others in the decision making going forward, rather than waiting to hear, well, what does council really think? So I think I appreciate the narrowing it down. I do believe that we have committed to by into early May or maybe middle of May, really providing the directors and the interim city manager with the assumptions going forward for what that budget might need to look like. Do we want to have, you know, I know it's their targets, they're not necessarily, and they'll be moving targets. So I feel a real need to look at some of those policy decisions, and particularly as they relate to the budget. And I also, to Councillor Baxter's note, I recognize, and to Dean Brookies, I recognize that everybody's all hands on deck, particularly on the staff. But I also know that we have to also work and move with an intent to what does next year look like. And so I would look at us having a really well-defined study session around high-level fiscal policies, in part to guide the interim city manager going forward as she thinks about other cuts and things that might be necessary.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, yes, please.
Well, I don't want to lose one of the topics, because we were talking about the bridge project and whether we should deal with that one in a future agenda. And I am all for seeing that. I think it can be kicked down the road a bit here. I want to bridge the gap between maybe what Kim was saying and what others might have said. Just that I agree with her that if they're ready to go, it'd be great to see at some point. I don't think that point is now. I think that staff has their hands full with these meetings that they're doing and trying to react to something that's very much fluid and very much happening and changing on a daily basis. And as they go into making some of these substantive cuts to the budget and deal with all of those relative issues, it's going to take an inordinate amount of their time that we can't probably even comprehend at this time. And so in addition to what I just said, I am in favor of having the study session that we were contemplating for next week. But I agree with others here that are, I think, saying that next week would be an inopportune time to do that. We're just not going to have enough information at that time. And I don't really want the staff to be spending their time at this time. As this thing is so hot and so heated and so much to do with it, trying to plan for something of a strategic nature when it's tough to implement strategy around a crisis, when you're really just so focused on the crisis. And I really think we need to, as a council, understand that this crisis is so big, it's dominating so much of their time, that they really need us to free up their time to address what are probably more important issues in the short term in our community. And then, yes, we have to tackle that strategic conversation, but I would say that's a couple months down the road at this point. No one intended for us to be here right now with this situation on our hands, but we have it, and we have to react appropriately to it. So that would be my thoughts on it.
I'm going to add to that. I would be in favor of if there's something critical to talk about in 2 weeks, great. But I think staff, what I would like to see, knowing what's happening in the environment right now, I think I mentioned these rounds of funding. We all know about the CARES Act and how that's being dispersed now is fairly evident. But the next round of funding, of federal funding to communities, because they forgot us in the first 3 rounds, is going to be very, very competitive. Governor Polis generally distributed the CARE, third edition of that, fairly equitably for all communities, but the 4th round could be very, very competitive. And so I would hate to have our staff talking about long-term reserve commitments when they should be out writing grants, dealing and competing amongst all the other communities in Colorado for those vital funds that will pull us truly out of this faster than otherwise. And so, I think we're in the middle of a crisis. We need to have our staff focused on get the money. And in the words of a past city manager we had, never let any good disaster go unfunded. We need to get the money as quickly, as fast as we can. And that's where our staff needs to be putting their efforts, I believe, right now. We can come back to this question in 3 to 4 weeks, but I think for this next week is both medically going to be a critical week for Durango as well as an economically critical week to make sure that we get our share of the funding. And that's all I know about that.
So in my experience, a lot of times grants are dependent upon the plan that you have for the money that you're requesting. And if we don't have good, thoughtful planning, long-range planning, we're not going to have as much to present. We won't have as much of a case. And I agree with you, Dean, that we do want to be able to reach out to that 4th round of funding. But if it's as competitive as you're saying it's going to be, we're going to have a very well-rounded application and very well supported reason for asking for the money that we're asking for. And personally, I feel that taking 3 weeks off as council is showing a lack of leadership. And we're not, let me finish. This is my opinion. And we are not doing what we are asking staff to do. We are asking staff to spend an inordinate amount of time, as you said, doing things. And we are not spending the same amount of time supporting them by having good policies about the things the council should be talking about. Reserves is one of them. There are others. What kind of reporting do we need? And I understand what you're saying. I know that staff is busy, but I also realize that we need as a council to step up in a leadership role to also participate and to also help. And stepping back and doing nothing is probably not the best thing we can do.
Well, specifically, I take that fairly personally because I have not been doing nothing for this past 2 weeks. And I hope you understand that. And for you to assert that to the public that we as councilors are not doing anything is absolutely incorrect. And I don't know about you, but I've been working almost every day, 24 hours a day on this, in this problem in a number of realms. So our community needs to know that our city council is in fact working on this issue day in and day out.
I absolutely agree with you, Dee. The problem that I'm hearing from what you're saying is that as I, as a counselor, don't know what you're doing, and the community doesn't know. So communication is something that we've talked about before, and I think that this just brings up a very, very good point, that you, in your activities of all this time you're spending supporting the city, you need to let council know what you're doing, and we need to let the community know what you're doing. And if we can support you in doing that, if I can help in some of those things you're doing to take the load off of you, I would be happy to. But if I don't know that, then I can't help. I am doing my own things on my own side. So one of the things we talked about, Melissa was not doing that. So I'm just saying, we need to know. Let us know what's going on. What are you doing? Let us know. I would love to hear it. I think it's fabulous.
In fact, there will be a the COVID update will be Friday. I'll be there. I'll be there with Leanne Jolene, which is to give the update. And I would say that the medical portion of this problem is being handled. And that's, what a lot of people ask, well, how come you guys aren't doing this or that medically? That's because this is a medical disaster, it's an economic disaster, secondly, and we will deal with that. But I think we should all be focused on the medical response to this right now, as opposed to the issues you're bringing up. I mean, the reserves are not going to be a qualifying factor for the fourth round of funding. I can tell you that Durango is so well postured compared to most communities throughout Colorado, because we do have great staff. We have a vibrant economy that will come back and support the state in their need to regenerate, backfill their losses as well. We're gonna be fine if we're there, if we show up, and we need to show up in the next week in those critical negotiations to get our share of the funding, is all I'm saying. And
just to add to, thank you guys again, just to add just to the conversation, let's just put this all into context. Everybody here, all of our council and staff, we're in a crisis response mode. It's a very different mode than normal for our normal channels of communication and how we operate together and how we communicate together. It's very different. We all know that. And so I would like to suggest that we should recognize that and support each other. And that's what I'm trying to do in making this next decision of how we focus our attention and on the most critical issues. I think that's what we all want to do. And I would love to hear from our interim city manager, Amber Blake. She has been doing a remarkable job leading our city during this time of crisis and taking action and swift, bold action in a time when she is operating under an emergency ordinance, which she is still currently operating under. So I'd like to hear from Amber.
Thank you, Mayor Youssef. So I understand where everyone is coming from. And in this case, if I'm happy to do whatever council directs us to do. We will be spending, my time will be spent working on the scenarios and the multiple targets to come back and say, this is what's been recommended. This is how we will be spending our funding or not spending our funding. Based on the information that we receive that changes on a daily basis as we learn more information, the targets are moving. So if council wants to get together and talk about fund balances and policies, then we're happy to go forward and do that, but that will take time away from what we're doing with the pandemic and related to our response to that and preparing for what happens when we get through the next couple of weeks, and if the curve flattens and we can start to reopen, what does that look like? And working with our community partners and what that looks like. And that's the opening of the businesses and not necessarily just what that impact is to the bottom line, but to the people and the people that work in our organization, but the community at large. So if council wants to move forward with the discussions, I'm not sure what kind of agenda documents you get. I will need very, very clear direction from council as to what you are asking from staff for that study session. Because you are right, 17-hour days get a little bit tiring after a while. But that's the job, and we're in it, and we're going to keep going for it. So in terms of Dean's comments related to grant funding, I believe that we are in an exceptional position. We have many successful grant writers on our staff, and we have folks following the legislative activities. We are on calls with our state and federal elected officials and their staff to ensure that we understand what's coming down the line. We are being asked for recommendations for what, formulas would look like, or what criteria would be requested, and what our needs are. So we are working on that, and it is all hands on deck at this point in time. I hear that it's challenging for the community. There's not folks sitting in here filling up the office with me, the home office with me, to see what we're doing all day, every day, just like all of you are doing your jobs and reaching out to your constituents. So if there's ways that we can improve communication, I think I'm hearing that there may be some room for improvement on that, and it's helpful to know what information we're not providing so that counselors can continue to help spread the word. I think that will be the biggest help, is continuing to let us know what questions you're getting so that we can make sure that, one, you know what we're doing and we can help you respond to your constituents. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I tried.
That's actually very helpful. It's nice to hear your perspective. I think I'm hearing that there's definitely a desire to have these conversations. I don't think anyone here disagrees with the fact that we want to have all of these conversations, and we will. It's a question of when. And I am hearing that there's time crunch on deck right now, and needs to focus on the emergent nature of the situation that we're in. I recognize that, and I'm wondering, Amber, would there be items that would be, helpful, in the short term, immediate term, if we were to meet next week to be putting on the agenda? I don't think that any of us want to be pulling you away, and focusing on items that we can focus on that are more long-term, potentially even in 6 weeks or less. I don't know. It could be less, but I'm concerned with the situation that we're in.
So my focus right now is addressing the situation at hand and making sure that we're in a good position to be able to continue providing goods and services to our community, or services and programs to our community. First bit, critical infrastructure, critical programs. I have a tiered approach in looking at that. And I can move forward on that, and I'm comfortable doing so with my staff. And then coming back to council to provide informational updates on what I'm putting into place. And I feel that that is the purview. That's why you hire a city manager, is to run the organization. And then the governing body will provide the policy and the framework and the goals at which I need to shoot towards the target. So if at this point, my marching orders that I see is continue running the city, make sure we have the funds necessary to do so, make sure that we're keeping track of each of the funds, where the money is going and how the money is coming in. We also, the second piece of that, working with the community to ensure that we're in a good position for recovery I'm comfortable doing that as well. The questions about fund balance, if there's a target fund balance and council would like to discuss a target fund balance, then that's perfectly fine. I believe that I would be I would be an active listener in that conversation, but that would be council's discussion. And then if you ask for my input on wherever you were headed, I would be happy to provide that. And I know I'm not giving you a super direct answer. If there's items that council feels very strongly that you need to provide additional policy framework for me to work within, then I'm happy to have those conversations, but I am comfortable with the framework that I have right now based on all of the conversations that council previously has had and the new information based on the pandemic. So if we have a study session next week, that's what we'll do. If we don't have a study session next week, then we can continue moving our work forward.
So, Amber, I really appreciate that because I agree with you that the city manager's job is the organization. And I believe that the city council's job is policies, procedures, and planning for the future in a way that as you're running an organization on a daily basis, particularly in crisis, you may not be able to anticipate or you need support in anticipation of that. One of the biggest challenges for me as far as reserves are concerned, and I disagree with you, Dean, that our reserve balances don't affect things. They do, because, for example, the 2005 capital improvement ones, Amber and I have had discussions where she is suggesting that it's possible that a 30% revenue reduction may be where we begin with in this conversation of revenue reduction. And if we have a 30% revenue sales tax reduction, that fund is solely funded by sales tax revenue, and we cannot meet our debt service. So the conversation then has to become, if we can't do that, what about the other $0.25 of the 2005 tax? So which has traditionally gone to other funds and other departments, do we take away from them? You know, that is a policy conversation as well as an operations conversation. And the other thing I want to say is that unless we have a fund balance conversation, Amber and the city don't know how much they have to reduce expenses with a reduction in revenue. So if we have a 30% reduction in revenue, if there's nothing else on the plate, that's a 30% reduction in expenses. And what's our biggest expense? It's our personnel. And we don't want to affect our personnel that way. So if we don't have a conversation about what we can do with those reserves to support not affecting our personnel and not affecting our expenses with a revenue drop, then we're not giving guidance to the person who's supposed to be managing the city. So that's my take on it.
I'll just weigh in again. I'm going to be a bit of a repeat record, but I do agree with Kim. We're going to have those discussions. Now is not the time. We need more information. And I do take umbrage with Kim, your comment about us not taking leadership. I've seen all of these folks working their tails off over the last couple of weeks. And so, and I feel as though I've contributed as well. So just because we're not interested in talking about what you want to talk about next week doesn't mean we're not all working hard. And I think we could take this time. Sometimes you just got to get out of the way and let the city manager do the thing. And that's the thing we have to do right now.
Okay, I think we've had a lot of round and around and about this. I also just want to reiterate what I'm feeling here, which is a lot of tense situations, a difficult situation that we're in. And, you know, it's just out there, guys. It's on the table. But I think that we are, I'm seeing staff actively responding, very, very proactively, and I appreciate where they're going. If I was to be doing anything sooner than later, I would love to see their input on their next steps, immediate steps of the tier 1, 2, tier 2, and tier 3. I know that that's what she's focused on, and I think it's critical for us to be able to look at that. No one's saying anything incorrect here. It all impacts everything in strange ways. But some things like reserve balances, long-term reserve policies, it's times like this where those are affected and they're changed because we just simply cannot have the type of reserve that we would love to have at the time because we can't. We will not have the money. And sometimes we're going to have to take that trade-off, that smart trade-off of, is it personnel or is it a reserve balance? And so I think that we need to kind of, that's what I've been also, like Councilor Bettine is saying, advocating for, is to let council get to, and the same with Councilor Brookie, which is looking at the data and understanding where we are, and let staff analyze this information and get it together so that they can start coming to us with a recommendation that we can then review and vet and make some, I think the policy discussions that we'll be having will be later, but we'll be approving a recommendation, which is in response to a crisis, which is what they're working on right now. And it's changing daily. So I think we're back to that. And I think we've spent a lot of time on this, but we haven't answered, we're still back to the original question. We haven't really answered any questions about if we're going to meet next week and if we're going to talk about the bridges. But I'm thinking after this discussion that there's majority support to postpone the conversation about the bridges to a later date. And I might need to tally council here to confirm that. We all recognize it's something we want to talk about. We are deferring the project for 2020. We agreed to that. So does council, is there council support to defer that conversation to a later date? Not far out, but a later date outside of the crisis situation that we're in right now.
So when you say outside of the crisis situation, what do you mean?
It's very fluid, Councilor Baxter, and so I don't have exact dates. I would love it to be June, ideally. Wouldn't that be great? But I just don't know what situation we're going to be. I don't think anyone knows. And so I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room here in our response and suggest that this is something that we don't want to be long-term. We don't even, this is probably high on our priority list. It would be great to have these discussions at some point, though we all know that these discussions have been deferred for 2020. So they're not the most important thing that we need to be discussing right now. And they probably should fit into a schedule that we devise within the next month, possibly, as we see how things pan out. That would be my advice.
Could I offer two options? First of all, yes, waiting on the options for the bridge. I think eventually, yes, we do want to have the information, but I don't, like I said earlier, I don't see the immediacy. Perhaps rather than making a decision tonight about whether or not we have a study session next week, perhaps if we thought about it and maybe folks posed some ideas of what questions we as a council might be able to address that could help in this situation, and then bring that very immediately, maybe in the next 2 days, back for consideration of if we're going to have a targeted discussion, it's going to be around answering these three policy or issues that can help us as we think about both budgetary responses in this pandemic, but also preparing for a future. So a targeted suggestion.
That's actually, am I muted? Sorry. That is so far the best recommendation I've heard, because it's helping us deal with the crisis situation at hand. And if we can help staff and support them in any way right now with where we are today, Amber, can you advise on if that could we help? Because if we would, you would have five counselors 100% willing to work and do what we could to support you.
So how about we can, if council wants to follow, councilor knows where these ideas of sending in questions or whatnot, that sounds great. Please know that all agenda docs are due on Friday. It typically takes 2 days to get that set up. So time would be of the essence if you would like to have this study session and like to have agenda documentation prepared for the study session. We'll be burning the midnight oil on Friday to make sure that that gets out. So we're happy to do it, but if you can be timely with any questions that you would like to discuss at that study session, that's critical.
I'm hearing. I don't want to take us down a road that you're not comfortable with, Amber. If I'm hearing what I felt like I might have been hearing in your answer, the other option is to give you more time. We are meeting as a council. We have a regular city council study session scheduled for April 21st. It's 2 weeks away, so we have city council meetings on the table, and we have future study sessions as well. What I don't want you to do is take an entire day on Friday to be focusing on an agenda doc for us, unless it's extremely relevant to what you're doing right now to manage the crisis at hand, Amber.
So, Amber, I think what I heard Mayor Youssef ask, though, was, were there things that staff thought, and that Barbara Noseworthy brought up, that we could support you in as city council? And I didn't hear an answer to that question. So are there things we can support you and we can do to support you? And I'd also like to know, what is your recommendation about the study session? If you really feel that it's not necessary, please just say that. I would love to hear your recommendation around that, or what works for you, because we need to be guided by you as much as we're guiding you. And if you're not being honest and direct, we can't make the right choice. And if the right choice is not to have it, then that's fine. And if there's nothing at this point that we can do to support you, that's great, but we need to know that.
And may I just say, Amber, before you jump in, my intent with preparing these questions was not to have a whole docket prepared, but I see them as high-level discussions that we as a council could be having. I don't see it as, I wouldn't want it to be materials you had to gather from other places or anything like that. I see it as a beginning of those discussions. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So my recommendation, oh, go ahead, Dean.
I was just going to say, I kind of responded to Barbara's thought about having a meeting, if nothing else, to figure out what else is happening. I mean, I've got questions about the homeless. What's the status of that? What's our transportation issues? All those kinds of things that we could just simply get a quick update. Not a lot of staff preparedness, but just a download of what is happening, so that all the counselors are on an even knowledge base, you know. So things like that might be helpful for the council to know what they can participate in, and what what the city is doing currently within, from homelessness to grant writing, and everything in between. But that would be a productive meeting in my mind. I've got a couple things to put on a list.
So I'll answer the direct question. At this point in time, I would not ask council to have a study session for items that you can assist staff with. I have more information that I need to compile and refine before I know what questions I would like to ask you for ways that you can help me. If you have a list of questions that will help you be a counselor and to respond to your constituents and feel more comfortable with the situation, please feel free to send the questions. And if there are questions that will require, that we want to do, have a public meeting so people can listen in, because that's what I'm hearing is that would be the productive session, is counselors put forward questions, we can prepare the answers and respond to you at a study session, and then you can have additional conversation where we're not trying to solve a problem at the study session, we're just providing information. I'm comfortable with that, and if council wants to move forward with that and that would be helpful, that's fine. But at this point, I don't need a study session for guidance or assistance this week. Potentially the week after the 21st, we will have enough information where it would make sense to have a work session.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one other question, and I'm assuming, and this could be wrong because I don't know, there's been no communication coming out about it, that the mayor and the mayor pro tem are still meeting with you on Mondays or at some point every week during the week?
Am I on mute? I'm sorry. We've had intermittent meetings, Councillor Baxter. We had one this week, but it was the first one we had in a while.
Okay, so what I would request then is that when there are meetings, maybe you as mayor or the mayor pro tem can update us on what occurs so that we know what's going on, and it would take that responsibility off of the city manager's shoulders to report that, and that would be one less thing that she would have to be doing.
I would be very happy to do that. We have one meeting. I think we have a meeting scheduled for next Monday. That might be my last, maybe. We'll see. And so I would be very happy to report on that.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great. And I didn't mean you personally. Basically, I meant the mayor, whoever was the mayor and mayor pro tem, right? So, yeah, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Then I appreciate this conversation. I think I'm hearing that I'm actually honestly a little confused as to where we just left that. Are we? So Amber, because tell me what you're comfortable with for next week. I think I'm hearing that we want to postpone for next week. We're just going to focus on April 21st and then the study session after that.
That is the most comfortable for me. If council has a list of questions they would like to have responses to in public, I'm happy to receive the questions in advance, and we can have an hour and 20-minute Zoom conference public meeting that's just, these are the questions that came up. My preference would be that the questions would be posted as an agenda document. These are the questions that will be responded to in the public forum. We can do that. I'm happy to meet with you because I'm hearing very loud and clear from Kim and Barbara and Dean that there's questions that they have that they would like to have answered. And the benefit of it would be in the public format where a community member can make sure that they reach out to you with questions and they can get their questions answered in a public setting where everyone can listen.
Actually, I'm not so concerned about getting questions answered. I think there's a process for that already. But
okay.
One of the things I am concerned about is if we're intending to have a city council meeting in 2 weeks, then we need to have a process for making sure that the agenda items that council wants to discuss is on that city council meeting. And if we don't have a study session, then we need to have a different process in place to vet those agenda items. That would be
right. I have the answer for you then. We will have a study session at 4:00 and it will be just to discuss what's going on the council meeting agenda for the 21st.
Great.
And that's what we're going to talk about.
Excellent. And I think I would just add one more thing since we're meeting, an update from you, Amber. If you could give us an update.
Yep.
And questions, and council can ask questions on that update.
Yeah.
That would be very helpful, I think.
And then the one other thing that we also discussed during study sessions is what are the next study sessions going to look like. So that'll mean that we'll have 2 weeks from then another study session. What does that look like? So somewhere along the way, and I don't think we can plan 2 weeks out necessarily, but somewhere along the way we need to have a process for figuring that out so that we don't lose things.
But also, could I jump in and add that unless things have changed, we still have on the agenda the 22nd and 23rd for our retreat. And so I think we need to discuss that next week. What does that look like? What do we want to accomplish with that retreat? So
that retreat was postponed, I think. Am I not correct? I saw it on the weekly status report.
I talked to David Marvin today, and he had mentioned that he has a majority of counselors that would prefer to defer until we can meet in person. Karen will be sending out, this was done late this afternoon, Karen will be sending out an email to council with dates once David Marvin gets back to me with dates that he's not available in June and July for dates that would work for council so that it can be done in person. And that was based off of the conversations that he had with each of you.
And then thank you, Amber. And I'll also add that we have pushed out our discussion of candidates for the city manager position, and that's also something that I think we might probably need a discussion of what that scheduling might look like in May or something like that, so that we're in agreement with how we're going forward with that.
And I think that the way we coordinate that has been working well through Crystal, and she reaches out to each of us, so there's no serial meeting because we really need to kind of do it that way at this step, at least for coordinating those initial meetings. And so I think that she suggested that the way we left it is she was going to be in touch with us in a couple weeks on that one. So I think we're at a good spot here. I think that we have, I think that we can still bring up, we will have the new business item for a study session next week. Let's keep that on there. We will definitely discuss our study session calendars and everything. It's fluid though. Let's give a little room, council, to staff to do the important work that they have at hand. And let's try to be supportive of each other through this process and stay united so that we can help the best we can and make some good decisions going forward. But I think this is good work. We will meet next week for 1 hour, and we will continue. Can I move on? Does any counselor, can I move on? And we will postpone the bridge discussion for a later date. We will continue that discussion as well. So with that, I think I'd like to move on and see if we can come to some conclusions here. Does any other counselor have anything else they wanted to add to their council reports and action? Great, excellent. I'm not going to add anything else either, because I think we've had some very good discussions and this has been helpful. And so I think that if I have a thumbs up from everyone, I think we can virtually adjourn here. And our next regular city council meeting is scheduled for the 21st at 6:30, and we'll have another study session. So with that, thank you guys. Thank you everyone for joining us. I am gonna adjourn this meeting, and I do want to thank our PIO team who has brought us live to the community. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. We so sincerely appreciate it.